To get these town names up here a little bit farther for you. Westport 144, Weston 147, Ridgefield 153, Bethel 157, then Danbury by 159. So this is a storm that is rapidly moving. We're looking to see where those greens and reds meet up. The green is moving toward the radar site, and the red is moving away. So we'll circle that for you, a little bit closer look here. Again, this is a storm that is over water that is making its way toward the north and over land. So again, let's do a little telestration here. We're looking at this area right in here where, again, the green is moving toward the radar site. This radar site that we're looking at is on Long Island, and then the reds is moving away. So this is heading right in the direction of Norwalk, Westport, Wilton, and then eventually farther northwest into Fairfield County. So Bruce DePriest, you're as well here as well with Scott, checking out the very latest on this storm.
All right, Mark. Well, yes, as you mentioned, we got that thunderstorm that's now to the Connecticut shoreline right around Norwalk. We got the tornado warning that goes all the way up to Wilton. It includes Reading, and it's in effect till what, 2:15, Mark?
2:15.
2:15. So right here is where we're seeing the rotation around that storm. As Mark said, you got winds blowing toward the radar site, winds blowing away from the radar site, and this is something we fully anticipated. We did expect tornadoes to happen today. There's a high probability of that happening. These spin-ups, which is common when you get a tropical system moving to the west of Connecticut. There's a lot of shear in the atmosphere, and there's a lot of rotation as well. So we could be dealing with several more spin-ups as the afternoon goes on, as a lot of these big rain bands move on shore on the eastern side of Tropical Storm Isaias. So there you have it. You can see a little rotation right there, a little green. It's what we call a couplet. The green represents winds blowing toward the radar site, and the red represents the wind blowing away. Mark just closed in on that a little bit more. So you can see this is coming on shore in Norwalk. So if you live in this area, the best thing to do, just as precautionary measure, go indoors, stay away from windows. The best place to be is inside your basement, and maybe surround yourself by, get underneath a sturdy bench or a picnic table or something like that, or go to an interior room and just stay away from windows, because if there are strong winds and there's breaking glass, that could potentially fly around. So an interior part of your house, the basement, is the best place to be. So this is a radar indicated tornado, and you can see that we have other showers and storms coming on shore. Any one of these do have the potential to rotate because of all the high shear that's in the atmosphere. So again, right now it's in southwestern Connecticut, coming ashore on Norwalk, and it's moving very fast. So if you do live in Wilton, if you do live in Reading, be aware that this is moving your way very, very fast. You don't have that much time to prepare. Mark.
All right, so we'll do a storm track again on this particular cell as it's making its way toward the north at around 70 miles an hour. So this is a fast-moving storm. Take you in for, again, a look here as the storm is moving to the northwest. And here we go to 70, north-northwest at 70 miles an hour. So here's the expected times of the arrival of the storm. Wilton 149, Ridgefield 155. Same for Reading, Bethel, close to 2 o'clock. Danbury, 2 o'clock. And New Fairfield at around 2:05. So we'll be monitoring the situation. Of course, when we see tropical systems move inland, they will spawn tornadoes. Typically, they're smaller and fairly short-lived, brief tornadoes. But of course, we'll keep on air and keep you up to date as long as conditions warrant. And Bruce, we're tracking elsewhere across Connecticut how we do have downpours that are developing, and this could really happen anywhere, especially as we broaden the view and look to our south. We have basically what looks like an arcing line of supercells that is going to be heading toward the general direction of southern Connecticut and the shoreline, if these are to stay together.
That's right, Mark. You can see that these lines of supercells are kind of making their way to the north. These are the outer feed bands on the eastern side of Tropical Storm Isaias, and the one initial band just came on shore in Milford, producing that tornado warning, which is still in effect all the way up to Danbury. And there's more crossing Long Island. There's more out in the Atlantic Ocean, and this is all moving toward the north. So there's the potential that more of these, as they move inland over Connecticut, could produce some spin-ups and some tornadoes. As Mark said, typically they're weaker tornadoes, but nonetheless can still cause damage. In addition to that, it's kind of hard to tell what's what. I mean, you got strong winds that are due to Tropical Storm Isaias. In fact, Battery Park, New York, had a wind gust to 78 miles an hour. You combine those strong winds and also with some tornado activity, and it's really hard to tell exactly what is going on. So the next couple of hours are going to be very intense here in Connecticut. We're going to see winds gusting to between 60 and 70 miles an hour. We're going to see tropical downpours. Now, fortunately, as Mark and Scott have been saying, the heaviest rain is to the west of Connecticut, but still, with these heavy rain bands moving through, we are going to see some potential for some flash flooding, certainly some street flooding, because these are tropical downpours, which means the rain is coming down very, very hard. So that's going to create a hazard on the roadways, in addition to maybe some small streams could go out of their banks. But right now, of greatest concern is this storm, which could be potentially producing a tornado, is lifting very rapidly to the north around 70 miles an hour. It's right there near Wilton. It's heading to the north toward Reading and also heading north toward the city of Danbury. So keep in mind, you're not going to have much time to prepare. So Mark is doing a little bit of a track here, and you can see some of the arrival times. Ridgefield. You know, Mark, I need my glasses, so maybe you could read those off.
Yeah, I'll be happy to help you, Bruce. All right, so Danbury by 2 o'clock, New Fairfield 2:04, and then points thereafter is going to be moving into eastern New York. Scott, you had something you wanted to convey to Bruce real fast here while I'm handling this. We do have this particular warning. You can see how quickly it is updating right now. How the storm has now made its way away from Norwalk into Wilton. So as we look at this storm again, it's going to be heading into extreme western and portions of Fairfield County. So eventually heading toward the 84 corridor and around Danbury if it were to stay together. So again, we're monitoring the rotation with this. It's again just now moving away from Norwalk and in the direction of Wilton and Ridgefield. It's more of a northwesterly projection right now, and doing so at roughly 70 miles an hour. So I have to come and actually do a little bit of an edit on here to account for this fast forward speed, and there's an update on the arrival times on this particular cell as it's making its way away now from the 95 corridor. It is moving just over and now away from the Merritt Parkway. So Ridgefield, Danbury, Bethel, all in the path of the storm, and eventually Interstate 84. Bruce.
Okay, Mark. I got my glasses with me just in case I need them. But, you know, this is going to be kind of a wild time in Connecticut between now and, let's say, 6 o'clock this evening. This is a fast-moving storm. That's why we don't expect the rainfall totals to be too excessive. But, again, the tropical downpours are going to create hazardous driving conditions. And we got the tornado warning in effect for, a good portion of Fairfield County from Norwalk, Wilton. It's actually moved away to the north of Norwalk right now, and it's moving through Wilton and on up toward Danbury. As Mark said, it's kind of moving to the northwest right now. So this will probably be kind of going right along the New York and Connecticut border over the next hour or so as it moves rapidly off to the north at 70 miles an hour. Now, also, we have some heavy rain moving into Milford. So any one of these bands coming ashore around Tropical Storm Isaias will have the potential to rotate. Again, they're not necessarily strong or long-lived tornadoes, but tornadoes nonetheless that could cause some damage. In addition to that, it's the strong winds around the storm itself that are producing some damaging winds. For example, New York City had a gust right around Battery Park to 78 miles an hour. So here it is, moving a little bit more to the north of Wilton right now. Mark is kind of honing in on that area. Ridgefield, you're in line. Well, Mark, it looks like there's some definite rotation right there. A little bit of what we call a hook echo, perhaps to the north of Wilton. If you want to put that into velocity mode, Mark, let's check out some of the winds. And yeah, there is a sign some rotation there. In Wilton, we got the green. Just to the east of Wilton, we got the red. So there is some indication there that the winds are turning in the atmosphere. In all likelihood, a weak spin up, but possibly a tornado nonetheless, radar indicated. We're, of course, always looking for confirmation from ground reports. But there it is moving off to the north, and it's going to be in Danbury around 2, New Fairfield around 2:04, Kent Hills around 2:09, and New Milford around 2:10. This is all assuming that it's going to be moving off to the north at 70 miles an hour. So be on the lookout for gusty winds, torrential downpours, and perhaps some of those winds could be damaging in that part of the state. And again, between now and say 6 o'clock this evening, parts of Connecticut are going to be seeing winds to 60 to 70 miles an hour, and perhaps even a few gusts that might go a little bit higher than that. Mark, back to you.
All right, so Bruce, as we're looking at early warning pinpoint Doppler, the heaviest of the rain right now is across western Connecticut. And just want to give you an update on Isaias while we are on the air. The center of the storm is going to be passing to the west of the New York City metro area. You can see there eventually into southeastern New York, as the center of the storm will stay to the west of Connecticut. That will certainly still create a wind issue for us outside of this tornado threat statewide, where we could get gusts to 60 to 70 miles an hour. That could lead to damage and as well for scattered power outages, or perhaps even widespread power outages as the day progresses. So again, here's the very latest from the National Hurricane Center. Clearly the storm track is to the west of Connecticut, and that is going to currently still produce, as of the last update, wind speeds at around 70 miles an hour. So to the east of this is where we're seeing that threat for storms that could possibly rotate. We've been talking about, if you saw us today on Eyewitness News at noon, there's an arcing band that's coming out just from southwestern Connecticut, southeastward across Long Island and eventually offshore. And it's kind of a segmented line of supercell thunderstorms. And those are the ones that, as they move north and inland, could certainly rotate and give us that possibility of a tornado. So the Storm Prediction Center has obviously, they've updated the outlook here, and as well the tornado watch that's in effect statewide. But in Connecticut, when we see the shade of yellow, that's obviously cause for concern. Now we have a notch above that with that shade of orange throughout southwest Connecticut and southeastern New York and northern New Jersey, and a good chunk of Long Island as well. So that is where the threat is for the greatest risk for tornadoes, but they really could happen anywhere here in southern New England. So again, looking at early warning pinpoint Doppler, honing in on this particular cell, again, it's fairly elongated from southeast to northwest, and this storm, remember, started over the water of the western Long Island Sound and now has been lifting rapidly to the north and northwest at around 70 miles an hour. So the center of circulation, the rotation associated with this, is now moved away, of course, from 91, away from the Merritt Parkway, has cleared Wilton now. It's heading toward Ridgefield and eventually toward Danbury. We can take a little bit closer look here with the velocities. Maybe not quite as defined, Bruce, as it once was.
And Mark, we are getting some reports from New York City. I was just checking out the National Weather Service reports. We can communicate with them through what we call National Weather Service chat, where we're getting tornado warnings from them. We're also getting reports of wind speeds, wind gusts, damage reports, and all kinds of information to keep us informed. And I was just looking at some of the latest reports, and right there in Queens, New York, and also right at JFK Airport, we've had some winds gusting to 70 miles an hour. So that gives you a really good idea what can happen right here in Connecticut. I think the most intense winds, as Isaias is about to pass to the west of Connecticut, are going to be coming between now and over the next couple of hours, where we could see winds gusting as high as 70 miles an hour and perhaps even a little bit higher than that. Again, when you combine that with the risk for severe thunderstorms and tornadoes, it's really kind of hard to tell what's what. So it's best to kind of stay put when you got the heavy rain bands coming down, because you don't know. They could reach up in the sky, pull down some high wind speeds to the ground. They could also potentially produce a spin up, or what we call a weak tornado. So there you can see a little bit of a rotation. Green, that means the air is blowing toward the radar site. Rain means it's blowing, or red means it's blowing away. So you can see there's just a little bit of a hook echo going on around Ridgefield right now, as this particular storm is moving off to the north very, very fast at 70 miles an hour. And that's the ingredient for severe storms and tornadoes. Not only are the wind speeds aloft very fast, but there's a lot of turning near the ground. We got easterly winds to southeasterly winds, and that imparts rotation. So we don't necessarily have to have lightning and thunder in a situation like this. These heavy downpours without lightning and thunder could produce tornadoes all by itself. No lightning and thunder necessary. Mark.
All right, so we continue to monitor this one closely as this tornado warning runs for a little bit longer for parts of far western Connecticut into Litchfield County. So just, Fairfield County, southwestern Connecticut. So as we look at the broader view here, you can see a lot of heavy rain. The greatest concern for flooding from Isaias will be to the west of Connecticut, as the storm center passes well to our west, but we're on the side of the storm that will certainly get a lot of wind. They could see some gusts to over 60 miles an hour, and this is non-tornadic wind. We're talking about straight line winds in association with this storm as it makes its way inland. But as we look to our south, you can see a segmented line of storms that extends from southwest Connecticut across Long Island, across areas offshore from there, where even water spouts are going to be possible. So as those storms develop and then move over inland, they could then in turn produce tornadoes. That is why the tornado watches, those red boxes that you see on your screen, are up for the entire region from Jersey all the way into Connecticut and Massachusetts, and as well for Rhode Island. So if you were planning to do some traveling today is probably a good day to postpone that travel, as we've got wind concerns as well as the concern for heavy rain. The greatest threat, though, again, for flash flooding is to our west, but as we look on early warning pinpoint Doppler, we're looking at the statewide perspective just to show you that we do have downpours that will reduce visibility. There's going to be a concern for hydroplaning on area roadways. There could be poor drainage nuisance type flooding. We're just speaking to the threat for flash flooding with 4, 5, 6-inch totals happening to the west of Connecticut as opposed to here within the borders of our state. So you can see the general motion here is from south to north, maybe a little north-northwesterly, as these storms again are on the northeastern extent of Isaias as that storm is making its way into southeastern New York, and eventually again will ride to the west of Connecticut. So the one active warning that we have in the state currently is the tornado warning for Fairfield County. It is this blinking red polygon. This particular warning goes until 2:15, so another 17 minutes from now, and this eventually is going to be making its way out of Connecticut and into eastern New York. And again, it was once showing much better signs of rotation. As we look at the velocity modes, it gives us a better idea as far as where that circulation is, and certainly not as pronounced as it once was. We also have a shear rate where we can come in and look at wind that is changing direction with height, kind of pinpointing some different areas, and again, not as pronounced as it once was. So that is that. Bruce, I hear you.
Yeah, I've got an update from the National Weather Service, Mark. They're continuing the tornado warning for Fairfield County until 2:15.
Okay.
The radar indicated, and they're saying it's right around Danbury right now and moving to the northwest, now at 75 miles an hour.
That is incredible forward speed. So, we've been looking for that rotation, again, not as defined as it once was. Maybe a little farther south, but by the radar updates here, it's probably just near and around Danbury right now as we look at where that notch is. So we could do a storm track from there. And again, wow, to the northwest at 75 miles an hour. So this is going to be out of Connecticut here very shortly. I've got to update the speed on here. So 75 miles an hour. That puts it in Paterson, New York, for instance, by 2:08. So that's about 10 minutes from now. So, this is soon going to be crossing 84. So that's going to be potentially an issue. But it's, again, moving so fast, it's only going to be over 84 for a brief amount of time. And again, as Bruce mentioned, this is a radar-indicated tornado. We've had no, ground truth verification or otherwise from this. Bruce?
Okay, Mark, I was looking at other reports of around New York City, Queens, Long Island. There are reports of large trees down on homes, and that gives you an indication what could happen right here in Connecticut. We have to keep in mind Connecticut is a very heavily wooded state, and we've had problems with gusty winds and trees before, and that could happen again. So we do have to be prepared for power outages here in Connecticut. We'll be watching whatever source is reporting as the afternoon goes on, because those 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts that have occurred on the western side of Long Island into the New York City area will likely make their way up over Connecticut. There is reason to believe that will happen, especially with these embedded showers and storms that are producing some rotation. Again, we got that ongoing tornado warning in effect for a portion of Fairfield County, lifting off to the north. Right now it's near Danbury, if not a little bit to the north of Danbury. And as Mark said, it should be lifting into New York pretty soon as it moves off to the northwest at around 70 miles an hour. Mark, let's check the rest of the state on radar. And we have to keep in mind that, a lot of times Mark, Scott, and I were close together when we do storm coverage like this. But, even in times of severe weather coverage nowadays, with COVID, we do have to have our social distancing. That's why I'm in front of the green screen. Mark is over there at the podium manning the radar. So But we are here to keep you informed. We're certainly not going to be lacking on that, that's for sure. So we can see more rain moving onshore in southern Connecticut. We've had occasional downpours in the greater Hartford area, but they've been very, very brief. And as Mark said, fortunately, the worst of this storm is going to be off to the west of Connecticut in terms of the heaviest rainfall, 4 to 6 inches across parts of Pennsylvania and New York. But we do have these tropical downpours that will put down quite a bit of water in just a very short period of time. We got dew points right now in the 70s, just fueling the atmosphere with a lot of moisture. So these downpours really do mean business, creating several hazards on the roads, reducing your visibility, putting a lot of water down, big puddles, which will make hydroplaning a concern. And of course, there could be some minor flash flooding here and there. But as far as the big rainfall totals, you know, maybe 1 inch to 2 to 3 inches of rain in some parts of the state, but that's not going to make things too far out of control. And so far, the heaviest rain has been in western portions of Connecticut. Eastern Connecticut, you've had some on and off rain, but nothing too heavy at the moment. But of course, we are watching these bands that are coming onshore into Connecticut from off the ocean, right around the eastern side of Tropical Storm Isaias. And there you can see right there around, well, I'm going to kind of look and turn over this way, Milford and New Haven. You've got some very heavy downpours, so be aware. This is going to create some driving concerns right now and over the coming minutes as more rain continues to move on shore. Mark, back to you.
All right, Bruce, I'm going to switch over to our iCam from New Haven just because there we have some very heavy rain that is coming down, obviously an ominous sky, and we have the wind that is just whipping right now, temperature around 80 degrees, sustained winds east-southeasterly at 24 miles an hour. So we do have an update on Isaias coming out as of the 2 o'clock hour. The center of the storm is now about 65 miles to the west of New York City. It is heading to the north and even doing so at a faster rate of speed than it was previously. Earlier it was at 35 miles an hour. Now it's up to 40 miles an hour. So that is again moving rapidly to the northeast. So the center of the storm will pass to the west of Connecticut, but that fast forward motion also means that it's going to be a briefer amount of time that we're going to have to deal with all the impacts associated with Isaias, as by say 5, 6 o'clock this evening, the storm center is going to be up around, if not even north of Albany, and moving away from southern New England. So the concern right now is the strengthening wind. Here is the latest wind gusts across the state. This is as of 2 o'clock. We have a wind gust in Bridgeport to 55 miles an hour. So we're talking about wind gusts up to 60, perhaps as high as 70 miles an hour. That is certainly something that can still happen as we head through the next several hours as the winds will continue to get stronger. So even inland, we've had some gusts to near 40 in Meriden, 1 to 40 in Waterbury, 1 to nearly 50 miles an hour in Danbury. Even, you say for Groton, for instance, at around 26 miles an hour. So we've got this wind concern statewide that's going to be with us for several more hours. In fact, the winds, again, will be getting stronger. As we check out early warning pinpoint Doppler, again, we've got the tornado warning for the cell that's moving out of western Connecticut and into eastern New York. So I think it's fair to say that interests here within our state are okay. But again, we're watching these storms that are moving throughout the rest of Fairfield County into southwestern New Haven County, and storms that are offshore as those are possibly going to also rotate and could produce tornadoes. So I want to take you into the latest frame here and just do a little inspection with regard to the velocity, see if we have any other little spin-ups trying to occur. So we'll take a look at the shear rate as well. So a little in around Monroe, perhaps, maybe a little rotation there. Also in around say Milford, perhaps. So we're going to be watching this this closely. And again, we've got something offshore too. That cell that's southeast of Milford has shown some signs of possibly rotating as well. So a water spout is a tornado over water. Those could move inland as they're across western Long Island Sound, certainly a possibility. So that is a concern as well this afternoon. In addition to the heavy rain that's going to reduce visibility, that concern for hydroplaning, perhaps some poor drainage, nuisance-type flooding as we head through the next couple of hours.
Mark, I'm checking on some power outage reports, and according to Eversource, there's 24,618 customers now without power in Westport, which makes sense, is one of the hardest hit towns. About 42% of Westport is without power. Norwalk, about 15% of Norwalk is without power. 4,722 customers. Southbury, Greenwich, Stamford, Weston, Newtown, Wilton, New Canaan. This makes complete sense. All these Western Connecticut towns and cities are the ones that are getting hit hard with power outages.
All right, so there you can see that.
Tornado warnings.
Two potential tornado warnings, one heading toward Hampton Bay, Long Island, and another near Bridgeport off Long Island Sound.
Oh, that's the one I was just referencing as we were checking out the shear rates. So here we can go and look a little bit closer here. So we've got, switch over to the velocities. Looks like it's maybe southeast of Bridgeport. Is that the one we were looking at?
Yeah, that one.
Because there's a tremendous amount of shear.
They're saying near Bridgeport, but it looks like the heaviest cell is to the east of Bridgeport.
So there's Bridgeport. So we're looking at certainly a lot of shear coming in on this storm that's basically southeast of Milford, southeast of Bridgeport. That particular cell there, Bruce, is
yeah, that's
what we're
the
looking
one.
at.
All right, so we continue to monitor these storms. As we said, that any one of these storms coming on shore in Connecticut can produce a tornado warning. We got Mark manning the radar. Scott's over there watching National Weather Service chat. We're getting a lot of information from them. Plus, we got our own radar to keep us going through this storm event. And this particular storm, which is kind of to the east of Stratford and to the east of Bridgeport, it's coming up over Milford. That's the one that we have to watch very, very closely
Bruce,
for signs of rotation.
We actually need to slide farther east because it's the storm that's over the Hamptons that has a tornado warning on it because of the fast forward speed. Now, this is, if you're looking at this, this is a very funky looking tornado warning, that polygon. So we're actually tracking the storm that's offshore of Long Island, that's heading toward Long Island, that if it stays together could reach, for instance, Old Saybrook, and that's why we have a tornado warning that extends for southern and coastal sections of Middlesex County.
Yeah.
So this is the storm that has prompted a warning. A tornado warning here in Connecticut is south of Long Island that is heading toward the north, and again, these are moving at a rapid pace. This particular tornado warning runs until 2:30, as this storm is going to perhaps make its way over the Twin Forks of Long Island, then perhaps over eastern Long Island Sound, and then make its way toward southeastern coastal Connecticut.
Quite honestly, Mark, I haven't seen a tornado warning look like that, but it's an unusual situation. We don't get tropical systems up here very often. You'll notice when you look in the lower right-hand side of your screen, there really is not much in the way of lightning. But in this particular case, you don't need lightning for showers and downpours to produce spin-ups. This is very common. As Mark is pointing out, right to the south of Long Island, this is the reason for the tornado warning. This is what we call shear. This is a shear swath, and you can see there's kind of a yellow and red area in there, and this is moving off to the north. So that's why we have a tornado warning in effect for places like Sag Harbor, all the way up into southern portions of Middlesex County, and that probably includes Old Saybrook, doesn't it, Mark?
Yes, it looks like it will. So
looks like it does include Old Saybrook. And how long is this tornado warning in effect for?
This till 2:30.
Till 2:30?
So I can go ahead and do a little zoom in here to show you. Again, we're looking at Old Saybrook points west through, say, Westbrook and, say, near Clinton. So Clinton east to Old Saybrook, perhaps even near Old Lyme if it were to stay together. So, that is... it's a fast-moving storm, so that is why the Connecticut shoreline has been placed under this tornado warning for a storm that has still yet to even work its way over eastern Long Island. So again, we're looking at shear. It's an exclusive product that you're only going to see here on Channel 3. We're able to look at wind that is changing direction with height. It really helps to pinpoint where there's that rotation that's happening, and this is on a storm that still has to cross Long Island and the Sound, and we do in fact have this tornado warning that is in effect for coastal sections of Middlesex County. So I'll go back over to the standard reflectivity mode. That storm certainly has a hook on it, and that hook is indicative of the rotation on the southern and southwestern extent of that storm. Just do a quick reset here as we look at the state of Connecticut. The tornado warning that was in effect for Fairfield County, while we still have that blinking red polygon, no longer a threat. We can certainly give an all clear near the, say, Danbury westward along the Connecticut border there with New York along 84. But otherwise, we're tracking downpours that are working south of Waterbury along Route 8. We'll just take a little bit of a quick inspection here as well with the shear rate. Nothing overly pronounced, but certainly some areas worth watching. And again, we were at one point watching that storm that was offshore from Bridgeport and West Haven, but that looks like that has weakened a bit. So again, on the statewide perspective, Areas along and west of Interstate 91 getting inundated with those tropical downpours right now. It's going to reduce visibility and lead to that concern for perhaps hydroplaning, so a reason why you shouldn't necessarily be driving this afternoon. And looking at the big picture even here with Isaias, you see those red boxes. As tropical systems move over land, they often spawn tornadoes. They typically are brief and are not larger tornadoes. They're typically of the smaller variety. And there you can see rapid motion of this storm now is to the north-northeast at 40 miles an hour. So the center of the storm passing well west of New York City and heading into southeastern New York and eventually up toward the Albany area as we head through the next couple of hours. So that puts Connecticut on the windy side of the storm. We have wind gusts across the state currently between, say, 35 and 55 miles an hour. The strongest wind gusts here within the last hour coming in from Bridgeport at 55 miles an hour. So again, just speaking to the severe weather threat today, anytime we see that shade of yellow, that is certainly something we will take very close attention of, but we're even a notch above that today in southwest Connecticut, where you see that shade of orange, indicating that enhanced risk for storms that could rotate and then also produce tornadoes. So again, back on the statewide perspective, Bruce, we've got all this heavy rain, but also monitoring a storm that is offshore from Long Island. It looks like it's moving inland right now over the Twin Forks. Yeah.
Yep. That looks like a very intense cell, and Scott is actually going to be up on our weather bug system. He's going to start to take a look at some maximum wind gusts that are here in Connecticut. But there's reason to believe that we're going to be seeing 70-mile-an-hour winds. When you get winds that high, damage does occur. We've seen damage in the New York City area, Queens, Long Island, where some trees have come down on homes. And there you can see the rotation with this particular storm. You look for couplets right there. You can see that lighter shade of green indicating some rotation there as the storm moves off to the north at a very greater than highway speed, or right around highway speed, 70 miles, 5 miles an hour. It's an incredibly fast-moving storm. So this is we're entering the peak of Tropical Storm Isaias right here in Connecticut. Things are going to be bad here in the state between now and, let's say, 6 o'clock this evening. So be aware of that after 6 o'clock, things are going to settle down. So Mark just painted it, some of the towns where the storm is heading. I'm going to turn this way for a second. Clinton, about 239, Madison, 239. The same in Westbrook and Old Saybrook, around 240. Old Lyme, the expected arrival time is 2:41. Anticipating that this is moving to the north at
65 miles an hour.
65 miles an hour. So be aware of that. If you live in that part of the state, Middlesex County, you might want to take shelter because, it could be a weak tornado. It could be something a little bit stronger. We just don't know. It's radar indicated. But the best thing to do is not be outdoors. You want to be inside your home or a solid building. You want to be away from the windows, the interior side of your house. The basement is a good place to be during a tornado warning. Get under something solid so that if anything does happen in terms of damage to your home, you're going to be protected. Again, you don't want to be around glass or anything like that. You want to be in the interior part of your house, and the best place to be, of course, is inside of your basement. So this storm is still over Long Island, but the tornado warning extends all the way up into coastal sections of Connecticut. Mark, if we could take a look at the larger view of Isaias and just show how fast that storm is moving. It's incredible. Again, you see these red boxes, polygons, those are the tornado watches. But the storm right now is probably to the northwest of New York City. It's moving very, very fast, very incredibly fast. So you can see that it's got the eastern rain bands moving into Connecticut right now. But with the forward speed of this storm, these intense conditions that we're experiencing right now are not going to last very long. So here it is, almost 2:15 in the afternoon, and we have probably another 2 to 3, maybe 4 hours to go before we start to see things improve. But we're going to see rapid improvement by this evening. But you can see there's still these heavy rain bands south of Long Island. They're kind of wrapping in from the south right into Connecticut. And as they meet land and encounter turning winds, they can produce these spin-ups, tornadoes. So we've already had 2 tornado warnings here in Connecticut today, and there's a possibility for more. We got a tornado watch that does extend into this evening. The other concern, of course, is these downpours that will impact parts of the state, putting a lot of water on the roads and creating driving driving hazards. You don't want to be on the roadways when these tropical downpours are occurring, and this is some of the heaviest rain you might see in quite a long time, because we really haven't had many tropical storms to deal with as of late. Faye didn't really do much to Connecticut, but it's certainly a big different story for Tropical Storm Isaias. Mark,
all right, so
to you.
Bruce, from the storm that was over Fairfield County earlier, we've got reports northbound Merritt Parkway off the Milford entrance ramp to the Merritt Parkway is blocked by branches, and traffic is being diverted to the Wilbur Cross Parkway according to the National Weather Service. But also we have video here. This is what you're looking at. What I was just speaking of, we were not looking at, but this is Interstate 84 in Southington, where we've not had any reports of a tornado in this part of the state, but this is where it looks like there have been some issues. Sarah, a tree fell onto the interstate. Okay, and that's why the traffic is what it is, and why the road is being blocked is because of a tree that fell. Because the winds across the state are certainly picking up. So we've got wind gusts across Connecticut. These are the most recent ones, up to 55 miles an hour in Bridgeport, one in Waterbury to 48 miles an hour, one to 39 miles an hour in New Haven. So the winds are certainly strong, and they're only going to get stronger. So we could get gusts to over 60, perhaps as high as 70 miles an hour, and that's all as Isaias, the center of the storm, again passes to the west of Connecticut. It's lifting to the west and northwest of New York City right now, and in just a couple of hours from now, it's going to be up around Albany, and things are going to be rapidly improving here in Connecticut. But in the meantime, we're going into the height, the worst, the peak of this storm as the winds are increasing, and as those storms from the south move over land, certainly could briefly produce some tornadoes. So on the topic of tornadoes, do want to get just back over here to early warning pinpoint Doppler as we make our way into southeastern Connecticut, because that is where we have a tornado warning. Now, as we look at the coastline of, say, Middlesex County, we do have this warning in effect from around Clinton through Old Saybrook, just near Old Lyme as well. But you look southward and there's nothing happening. Well, that is because the storm that prompted the tornado warning is actually, as we expand the view, not even over eastern Long Island Sound, but moving over the Twin Forks of Long Island. So the rotation has just cleared Southampton. We'll take a little bit closer look here and look over into the reflectivity mode, or the velocity mode. There's certainly still some rotation here, but the thing is, it is moving so fast. The storm is moving northerly at 65 miles an hour. So this is going to be eventually making its way likely to the west of Sag Harbor as it lifts to the north, and then eventually over eastern Long Island Sound, and then toward coastal southeast Connecticut. So you can see here as we put this into motion over just the last 15 minutes alone, how quickly it is moving to the north. In fact, we'll do a 1 minute iteration here over 15 minutes to show how it is progressing to the north, and it looks like almost north-northwest. So it may be, if this warning were to remain, they may have to reissue or expand it farther west to include more of the Connecticut shoreline. But this is a storm that has certainly shown signs of rotation and continues to do so as it works over the Twin Forks of Long Island, and then eventually will be emerging over the eastern part of Long Island Sound. Bruce, anything new on your front?
Well, no, I'm continuing to monitor reports coming out of the National Weather Service in New York City. That's the one National Weather Service office that's really been busy, as well as us this afternoon. You can see we have these heavy rain bands continuing to move northward into Connecticut from off the Atlantic Ocean on the eastern side of Tropical Storm Isaias. And these rain bands are going to continue to move in, say, between now and around 6 o'clock this evening. We're entering the height of the storm right now, where we're going to see the strongest winds. We're talking about winds that could reach or exceed 70 miles an hour. We've seen that happen in the New York City area. Battery Park had a wind gust to 78 miles an hour, and there's been several other reports of winds gusting to 70 miles an hour on the western side of Long Island into New York City. So that is, it's reasonable to believe that that's going to happen right here in Connecticut. So when you get winds up there around 60 to 70 miles an hour, trees and power lines are going to come down. At last report, and we had, over 24,000 Eversource customers without power, and that will likely go up. So Hopefully, we won't be without power too long. I think the power outages will continue to mount as the worst of the winds are expected between now and over the next couple of hours. 70-plus mile-an-hour winds. In eastern Connecticut, it may not be quite as intense, but you're still under a tropical storm warning. Your wind gusts there may be more on the order of 50 to 60 miles an hour, but we don't want to call anything off just yet. It's right there over western Connecticut for now that's seeing the strongest winds and the most power outages, with those winds gusting to perhaps 70 miles an hour, which is near hurricane force. Tropical storm force winds go anywhere from 39 to 73 miles an hour. I know it's a very wide range, but when you get up to 74 miles an hour, that is hurricane force winds, the lower threshold of hurricane force winds. And we could potentially see winds gusting to hurricane force in western portions of Connecticut. And we still have that tornado warning in effect for portions of Middlesex County, and Mark is going to have the latest on that.
Yeah, so this storm, Bruce, is rapidly moving to the northwest at around 65 miles an hour, and we often talk about a hook, and you can clearly see the hook on this storm to the west of Sag Harbor. It's cleared the Hamptons. It is moving toward the northwest at 65. As we check out the shear rate, you can see that brightness of shades of green, indicating where that rotation is. As we look at the velocity mode, it's still somewhat prevalent there. But we'll go ahead and do a storm track on this cell from where the storm is rotating to the northwest. Again, this is moving at roughly 65 miles an hour. So that would put it in Clinton at 238, about the same for Westbrook and Madison, also over toward Old Saybrook and Old Lyme, and then farther inland, Essex at around 243, Killingworth about the same, Deep River 245, and Chester 246. That is given that this storm stays together. So a lot can happen between now and then. It's 221, but again, this is a rapidly moving storm. So it had much better signs of rotation earlier, not as pronounced currently. Again, we're monitoring this as there is a tornado warning in effect for where you see that blinking polygon. So it's an odd shape, and that is given the fact that it's been, it was initially issued south of Long Island, then has been moving over the eastern extent of Long Island, and then will be emerging over eastern portions of the Sound before making its way into perhaps coastal Connecticut. So we're monitoring that very closely. Again, this particular tornado warning runs until 2:30, so it's another 8 minutes from now. So we'll see if that gets extended in time and any farther west along the Connecticut coastline. As we look at the statewide perspective, the western two-thirds of the state certainly being inundated with tropical downpours. Put this into motion, the general direction of travel here is from southeast to northwest. So if you're up and down the 395 corridor and wanting some rain, right now it's off to your west. We were hoping for some beneficial rain, and we're getting that in parts of Connecticut, but it's not necessarily statewide right now. And again, we're still monitoring the threat for these storms to rotate. So as tropical systems move inland, they often can spawn tornadoes. That happens all across the country as these storms, if it's the Gulf Coast, Florida, or up and down the eastern seaboard, very commonplace as these tropical systems move inland to produce a byproduct of that is to produce tornadoes. So that is where you see these red boxes. Those are tornado watches that are in effect. So as the storm lifts away from Connecticut over the next several hours, the threat for tornadoes will certainly decrease, and eventually the wind will be switching from out of the east and southeast to more of a west-northwesterly direction later on this evening and tonight as the storm clears northern New England, in fact, and heads into eastern Canada. So it is notable how fast the center of the storm, or the storm in general, is moving to the north-northeast, talking about Isaias as a whole, at around 40 miles an hour. Earlier this morning when I got in with Scott, it was at 33 miles an hour. The 11 o'clock update went up to 35 miles an hour. The 2 o'clock update now up to 40 miles an hour to the north-northeast. So, and still producing sustained winds near the center at around 70 miles an hour as it's lifting again now into southeastern New York. So it's moving away from Philadelphia, away from Jersey, and making its way out of northeastern Pennsylvania as well. So the latest track, again, from the Hurricane Center was one that included a shift to the west. So that means the threat for heavy rain and flash flooding is not as great as it once was, where we could see those 4 to 6 inch totals, likely well to the west of Connecticut, as opposed to here within our borders. In fact, we can show you that here with the latest run of Futurecast, showing those reds and purples, and even going off the charts there west of Interstate 87 and up toward Albany, where we could get 4, 5, 6 inches of rain. Again, checking in on the latest wind gusts across Connecticut, up to 55 miles an an hour in Bridgeport, a gust of 40 in Meriden, and a gust of 48 miles an hour in Waterbury. So with regard to our weather alerts, we have tropical storm warnings that remain up for the entire state and really region-wide through this evening, as winds could gust in excess of 60 miles an hour. And just do a little quick run here of Futurecast showing how by, say, 4 o'clock, those storms are lifting through the state, and by, say, 6 o'clock, conditions will be rapidly improving with regard to a severe weather threat, with steady and heavier rain tapering off to just some lingering showers. So the greatest threat, again, from Isaias with regard to just the storm, the tropical system as a whole. Flash flooding, not as great as it once was. Wind damage, and we're going to likely see the power outage numbers grow through the afternoon. And then coastal flooding is not as big as it once was, because as the storm begins lifting away from Connecticut, as our next high tide cycle happens, the wind will not be onshore. It will be coming in from out of the west and northwest off the land. So it will actually help to improve that coastal flooding concern. So with the tide cycle coming up at around midnight. So again, looking at early warning pinpoint Doppler, western Connecticut, say along and west of 91, we've got those tropical downpours, but what we continue to monitor closely, of course, is what is happening south of Connecticut with a storm that is now emerging from eastern Long Island.
New information, the National Weather Service expires the tornado warning for Suffolk, New York, and Middlesex County.
Okay, so some good news there. We were
So a little bit of good news there.
Yeah, so we were in our last little radar update that we did here on air. We were indicating that the rotation was not as pronounced as it once was. So as we come in and look at the velocities and as well the shear rate, yeah, definitely an improvement there. So some good news. You know, for those with interests along the Connecticut shoreline, we were talking about this tornado warning, basically from say Clinton through Westbrook, if you're at Hawks Nest Beach, perhaps over toward Old Saybrook, Fenwick, Old Lyme, certainly some good news. We still have a storm that's heading in your direction that could produce some heavy rain and as well some gusty wind, but it looks like the threat for a tornado has certainly diminished from what it once was.
That's right, and these storms can regenerate any time. It's a very volatile situation, so these storms that do move across Long Island, across Long Island Sound into Connecticut, can still produce tornadoes. So even though that tornado warning has expired for Middlesex County, we can't let our guard down. Now, one thing I'm looking at, and Scott and I are both looking at some reports coming in Waterbury, there has been a report of a 9-inch tree branch reported down. And this is something else that's of really a great concern. There's a report in a place called Rego Park in Queens County, New York, of a medium-sized tree uprooted and crushed a car at Saunders Street and 66th Avenue. You know, this is a very heavily wooded state. You know, places like the Merritt Parkway, which is really feeling the brunt of this storm right now in Connecticut. It's not a good time to be out driving, because if a tree comes down, it could potentially come down on your car, and you don't want that to happen. So it's not really a good idea to be traveling around at this point in time. Connecticut is a heavily wooded state. We have a lot of trees. Some of them are still overhanging the road, even though the DOT is doing a good job at kind of beating them back a little bit. But we've also had a report of Four Corners, which is in New London County. A train spotter reports tropical storm force conditions, a tree uprooted and down on Georgia Road and Massachusetts Road. So yes, trees are coming down now. And Marco, I'm going to check on the latest power outages, and they're up to 54,117 power outages. So it's nearly doubled in about the last half hour, I would say. The greatest impacted town appears to be, and I'm kind of listing them in order. Norwalk, about 17% of the town is without power. Danbury, 14% of the town was without power. Excuse me. Westport, 4,456 customers are without power, and that is about 35% of the town. Also, Southbury, about 36% of the town is without power, according to Eversource. So the power outages are mounting. Evidently, trees and branches are coming down on power lines. So again, that's why we urge you to not be driving at this time if you don't have to, because you don't want a tree to come down in your car and cause harm or perhaps even worse. So,
all right, Bruce. So I've got up now early morning neighborhood weather, wind gusts. Greenwich, we have a gust of 58 miles an hour. One from West Haven at the Engineering Science Magnet School there to 63 miles an hour. One in Litchfield to 36, and one in Hartford at the O'Neill State Armory to 37 miles an hour. So this is on our exclusive network of neighborhood weather stations, part of the WeatherBug network, where we do have these wind gusts already eclipsing the 60 mile an hour mark. That's the case so far in West Haven, and the winds could get a little bit stronger as we head through the rest of the afternoon. So again, looking at early warning pinpoint Doppler, heavy rain continues to inundate really the western 2/3 of the state, and again tracking a storm that once had a tornado warning associated with it heading toward the coastline of Middlesex County. That storm heading toward, say, Clinton, eastward toward Old Saybrook and Old Lyme. But the warning was allowed to expire. You see that blinking polygon there, no longer in effect for the Connecticut shoreline.
There's a report on Deepwood Lane. Of course, this has to be confirmed in eastern Connecticut. A person reporting into the National Weather Service said it looks like a tornado touched down in Deepwood Lane in Easton. He evidently has photos. So that's, something we'll have to wait and see on. It's kind of hard to really tell what's causing what damage, whether it's a tornado or just the winds around East that are clocking in at 70 miles an hour and then some. So that's a reason to believe that that's going to continue to happen, especially over western Connecticut, where we've seen over 50,000 customers without power, and that number seems to be growing rapidly. So these heavy bands of rain keep on moving in. That one a thunderstorm that had a tornado warning attached to it is about ready to move into Clinton right now. So we continue to monitor that, even though the tornado warning has been canceled. These particular storms can cause a spin up at just about any time. So there you see it's moving so fast to the north that it's going to be impacting Clinton and Old Saybrook with torrential tropical downpours, rain coming down and creating a very, very poor visibility as this moves off to the north. And that's also going to impact not only Clinton and Old Saybrook, but portions of Killingworth, Essex, and Deep River, kind of going up the Route 9 corridor in southeastern portions of the state. It looks like the velocity, what we look for, turning winds in the atmosphere, it's not terribly impressive right now. And that's why the tornado warning excuse me, has been canceled by the National Weather Service. But again, these bands of rain continue to move onshore and produce a tornado or spin up at just about any time. Again, the risk is between now and around 6 o'clock this evening. After that, we should see conditions get a little bit better. And by then, we'll start to see ECES moving up toward the Albany area and away from Connecticut. But over the next several hours, weather conditions are very intense. The wind is blowing, the trees are swaying. Trees and branches are coming down, creating a lot of power outages. So that's a big concern. If you don't have to travel, stay put and let the storm ride out. It's not going to be here that much longer. So this evening, it'll be a much better time to get out and travel about. And of course, by tomorrow morning, it's long gone and we're in for a very nice day. But weather conditions are going to be very intense for the next couple of hours. Mark.
All right, yeah, so as you look at wide view here, just to recap briefly, we do have ECES, the center of the storm, passing to the west of New York City into southeastern New York in the general direction of Albany. Those red boxes indicate tornado watches that remain in effect here across our state for a few more hours. As tropical systems move inland, they could spawn tornadoes. They're typically brief, short-lived, and are fairly small. So we're going to be continuing to monitor that for you. And right now, we have no active tornado warnings or even severe thunderstorm warnings in the state currently. So on that note, want to continue our team coverage as we have our reporters fanned out all across the state, and want to send things over now to Dennis House at the anchor desk. Dennis.
Mark, Bruce, thank you very much, gentlemen. Nice job, with an assist from Scott Haney as well. We're tracking tropical storm ECES, creating problems across Connecticut. And in this scene here, churning up the water in Milford. The storm made landfall in the wee hours this morning in North Carolina and quickly moved up the coast. Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'm Dennis House. We have reporters around the state as ECES moves through Connecticut. Eyewitness News is everywhere covering ECES. Our crews are spread out all around our great.
This is tough. And right behind me is the race boat Sequoia, and it is listing. You can see in this wind, and I see blue sky too. So it's crazy what's going on. But the wave action was getting higher, but thankfully the tide was going out. But still very intense. All the boaters here, yachtsmen, they've double tied. They've very secured their boats. here in the water and those up on dry dock here. Everything is secure. But we'll have another report coming up and continue to monitor these strong winds here in Westbrook. Live at the mobile newsroom in Westbrook, Kevin Hogan, Channel 3, Eyewitness News.
Okay,
54.
Kevin, thank you very much. Very demonstrative, very illustrative for us today. We appreciate that. Our power has come back on here at Channel 3. Our team coverage continues now in the Litchfield Hills, where some of the heaviest rain is happening. Channel 3 Eyewitness News reporter Susan Raff is live in Torrington with a look at the conditions at the gateway to the Litchfield Hills. Susan, what do you see there?
Dennis, this has been such a strange storm. For the past hour or two, it's rained, then stopped, then rained, but now it is coming down pretty hard. We are on Route 4 near University Drive. This is an area where they usually get a lot of trees down, and you can see some of the trees swaying. The winds have picked up, and the rain is coming down pretty heavy. At this point, though, Torrington police tell us they have not seen any accidents, and at this point they have not had many trees down, but we do know that in neighboring Kent and Sharon, they've had some problems there with winds and trees down. And as you know, yesterday, the National Weather Service confirmed that there was a tornado in Sharon, so that's a tough area. But here in Torrington, you can see, take a look at Route 4. The rain is coming down so heavily now, and in fact, the traffic that was coming down here pretty much has stopped, because I think people are getting the message that the storm is definitely picking up, and this is not what you want to do driving around on these roads. So here in Torrington, just in the past 10 or 15 minutes, the wind is coming down. It is raining pretty heavily. At this point, we are told there have not been any accidents, and we're hoping it stays that way. You definitely want to be inside on a day like today. We are live in Torrington. Back to you, Dennis.
All right, Susan, stay safe out there. Let's go back to the shoreline, though. Earlier, we had Kevin Hogan in Westbrook. Let's just go to the west of where he is standing, to the town of Madison, where Channel 3's Joe Zone is there. He was at Hammonasset Beach Park a little bit earlier today. Joe, what is going on there?
Well, I can tell you this right now, Dennis, the story here is not the rain, it is the wind. If you look behind me right here, that's Tuxas Island, and that's kind of a barrier, but the winds are now, according to the harbor master, are up around 50 degrees. He says since Hurricane Irene, these are the biggest waves he has seen down here since that hurricane. As you can feel, the gusts are coming now and then, but the wind has picked up considerably. I'd say over the last hour, before people were coming out there walking their dogs along the parkway, along the roadway here, but now they're both stopping, they're taking pictures. This is a very popular spot, as you can see, for scenery. But the waves are high, they're big. The water level is coming up slightly. But the story here, Dennis, not rain, but wind. We're live here, Joe Zone, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Joe, I want to ask you, from your vantage point there, can you see if any of the waves are actually hitting homes right now?
As a matter of fact, Dennis, they are not. I was told that when Irene came in here, that wall down there in the corner was knocked down, and half of the pier was eliminated during Irene. But right now we're not getting that. The waves are big, the water's coming up a little, but the homes from here are still maybe 15 to 20 feet above the water line.
Power of Mother Nature along the Connecticut shoreline. Joe Zone in Madison for us today. Thank you so much. Let's go over to our weather department now. Mark Dixon and Bruce DePriest are manning the fort, and they have the very latest on what's going on. Mark? Yes, Melissa as well, and Scott. Melissa and Scott are here.
Yes, so we've got the entire team almost here today. Scott, Bruce, Melissa, myself, everyone. So we're tracking a storm that once had a tornado warning associated with it that was moving across Long Island that has now reached the Connecticut shoreline. There's no tornado warning in effect for Madison, Clinton, over toward Old Lyme and Old Saybrook, but this storm had a history of producing some rotation. So with this, perhaps some gusty, damaging wind, as well as some heavy rain. No lightning associated with it, and it is rapidly moving to the north and doing so at around 60 to 65 miles an hour. So looking at the statewide perspective, we've got that cluster that we're tracking. In and around Hartford right now, some heavy rain currently ongoing, heading through Wethersfield into West Hartford, Farmington, New Britain, Rocky Hill, and Berlin. As we make our way to the northwest of Hartford, tracking as well some downpours. These are all just tropical downpours. Barkhamsted, New Hartford, also around Norfolk, as well as through Canaan and Falls Village, of course, an area that was hit hard with the tornado just Sunday evening. And then southward through there, through Litchfield County, Warren to Washington, Morris, very heavy rain too. do. It's going to reduce visibility, perhaps create a situation where there's ponding on roadways to where there could be an issue for hydroplaning. But overall, the threat for flash flooding has certainly decreased given the fast movement of the storm and as well a track farther to the west from Connecticut. So we've got heavy rain over Danbury and Bethel, also tracking downpours up and down Route 8 and points west from there, Monroe through Trumbull. So looking at the statewide perspective, and this is, I'll put this into motion for over the last 1 hour, and you're going to see just how quickly all of this is moving. It's rapidly making its way from basically south to north as we're now on the eastern extent of Isaias. So that particular system there you can see on the wider view, the center of the circulation passing to the northwest of New York City and to southeastern New York and eventually up toward Albany. Those red boxes indicate tornado watches. We've already seen numerous warnings here across the region, and that threat will be with us for the next couple of hours until the storm lifts a little bit farther to the north from Connecticut. So as of last update, the sustained winds on Isaias have now dropped a little bit. They went from 70 miles an hour to 65 miles an hour, but the forward speed is notable because that has increased. It was earlier at 35 miles an hour to the north-northeast, now to 40 miles an hour. So it's going to be actually clearing Albany, for instance, by, say, 8 o'clock tonight, if not even sooner than that. And given that track, again, the axis of heaviest rain, where we could see 4, 5, 6 inch totals, certainly is well to the west of Connecticut. So we're monitoring that threat for severe storms and for storms to possibly rotate. And there's a look at the most recent wind gusts from the reporting stations from across Connecticut, between 35 and 55 miles an hour. Notable, of course, Bridgeport at 55 miles an hour, but Waterbury now up to a gust of 52 miles an hour. Bruce.
And Mark, we had a gust to 63 miles an hour reported recently in West Haven. So again, there is reason to believe we could see winds gusting as high as 70 miles an hour. Just check the latest power outages, and Eversource is reporting about 74,000 customers without power, even more than that. And United Illuminating is reporting about 26,000 customers without power. So when you add that all up, we're talking about 100,000 customers right now without power. That is a significant power outage, and as I said before, you don't want to be out driving at this time. Weather conditions really got bad very, very fast. In fact, when I came in early this afternoon, shortly after the noon show, I could tell even from driving from Wethersfield to Rocky Hill, the winds were getting stronger and stronger as I moved south into Rocky Hill. So weather conditions are reaching their peak right now in Connecticut. A gust to 63 miles an hour in West Haven, New Haven. A gust to 58 West Haven. In another location in West Haven, a gust to 56 in Weston, a gust to 55. But these winds are definitely strong enough to cause a significant power outage, and there's reason to believe that we will continue to see winds gusting to 60, maybe even 70 miles an hour over the next hour or two. Mark and I were kind of talking with Scott and Melissa, and we really think that we're at the height of the storm now. It's going to continue for a few more hours, and by early this evening, we're going to see conditions really improve as Isaias begins to move off to the north and west of Connecticut. But we do have the heavy rain bands coming down in Litchfield County, some heavy rain in and around the greater Hartford area, and that one thunderstorm that at one point in time did have a tornado warning attached to it is producing some heavy rain, and that's moving right into Haddam right now, East Haddam. It's going to be moving up toward Moodus, and we can see that right now there's not a whole lot of rotation, but there is some swath indicating that there's strong winds with this storm, and a lot of times, even if you don't have a tornado, what could happen is these showers reach up into the atmosphere and pull some of those high wind speeds down right to the ground. And notice, in the right-hand side of the screen, oh, we just had something happen on our roof that was very, very loud. Not sure what it was, but I'm sure our engineers are going to investigate that. But there was a loud bang on the Channel 3 roof. I don't know if you heard it over my microphone, but it was pretty scary. Just tells you how strong the winds are. This particular shower that's moving through the Hartford area and Rocky Hill, that could very well be bringing some of those high wind speeds down to the ground and causing some damage. Of course, are we still on generator power, by the way, or are we back up on normal power? We don't really know.
We're on the air. That's all that matters.
That's all that matters. Whether it's a generator or power from Eversource, we are on the air. Again, kind of a scary sound up on the roof just a little while ago as these bands of heavy rain continue to make their way into the state. Again, caution. Not a good time to be out on the roads for two reasons. Trees can come down. That creates a hazard. Also, a lot of water goes on the roadways in a very short period of time, creating a hydroplaning threat, and it's going to be hard to stop your car if you move through a puddle. In addition to that, the visibility gets poor, especially on the highways where you have trucks going by, bringing up the spray, and the heavy rain is coming down. So it's really, if you don't have to, it's really not a good time to be traveling on the Connecticut roadways, as we're now pretty much in the height of this storm.
All right, so as we look at early warning pinpoint Doppler, again, showing these downpours moving across the state from the south to the north, and doing so at this very rapid pace. Looking at the wide view here, we've got the center of the storm. You can see that counterclockwise churning now, making its way out of northeastern Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, into southeastern New York, a storm track that's going to take it to the west of Connecticut. So we've got the heavy rain that is moving across the state now, but something statewide that we have to contend with is, of course, the wind being on the eastern side of the storm. Those wind gusts, as Bruce was outlining, we've had some gusts over 60 miles an hour. Here's the most recent wind gusts from the reporting stations that auto update across Connecticut from the Weather Service, up to a gust of 40 miles an hour in Meriden, 52 miles an hour in Waterbury, and 1 to 55 miles an hour in Bridgeport. So.
And Mark, we just had a gust reported in New Haven at the Cold Spring School of 62 miles an hour.
All right, I'll get that on screen here. 63 West Haven, 62 New Haven, gust to 56, 55 for West Haven, Weston. So, all right, that's the latest from here for now. We'll send things over to Dennis House as we continue our team coverage with our reporters that are all across the state. Dennis.
Good enough. All right, Mark, thank you. We have crews spread out all across our state to cover ECES from every angle. Let's head down to the Elm City now and find our New Haven Bureau Chief, Matt McFarland, along the shoreline there, along the harbor. Matt, what do you see?
Well, we're seeing a strong wind picking up. You know, we just heard Mark talk about a 62-mile-an-hour gust at the Cold Spring School in New Haven. Well, we're feeling those gusts here along the harbor. Photojournalist Corey Peck sort of giving you an idea of what we're dealing with, and also bracing the camera because it is pretty windy, pretty gusty here. You can sort of see the spray from the sound coming up. We've seen a couple of folks sort of come along here to the Long Wharf area to snap some pictures. A lot of folks curious and in awe with Mother Nature. But yeah, very windy. It's probably picked up within the last 45 minutes or so here along the shoreline here in New Haven. We actually spoke with a truck driver earlier today. He says, I drive a truck for a living. He's like, and I could feel my truck shaking back and forth, the cab and the truck, as I'm out on the road. He actually pulled over for a little while. He says he might have to pull over. He was heading back up to Massachusetts. So very windy out here. Here in New Haven, their big concern was with the wind, the possibility for down trees, down limbs, and then, of course, bringing down power lines as well. So that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on here in New Haven. But again, the big story down here along the shoreline is the wind. They said that was their main concern here in New Haven. They weren't too concerned about the rain. They said maybe some localized flooding in the areas that typically have low-lying areas. But again, the wind is the big story here in New Haven. For now, though, we're live at the mobile newsroom in New Haven. Matt McFarland, Channel 3, Eyewitness News.
Okay, Matt, thank you. We have this video just into our newsroom from the shoreline in Madison. That would be east of where Matt was just standing. And as you can see, as soon as we cue this video up for you, we do not have it. All right, let's go to Westbrook, though, where Channel 3's Kevin Hogan is live along the shoreline with the conditions there. Kevin?
Hi, Dennis. We're at the Pilots Point Marina, the North Yard. The wind has picked up. Now, last time you came to us, it was pouring. It was windy. It was tough. We had 57 miles an hour wind gusts here. The Sequoia was listing. It's still listing. Then the sun comes out. I've been able to dry off in the past 20 minutes, but the wind has been very strong. Now, here's some video we recorded just a short while ago, because the boaters here at Pilots Point Marina, like Peter McCluskey, are very concerned because of the strong winds, and they have to tie down their boats.
Tie breast lines off, tied off the dock so it doesn't ride hard on it, and just make sure there's nothing flapping around.
And those are the boats that were in the water. The yard manager says that they had to secure all the vessels that are in tie downs all over the yard and on stands, because it could have been the owners that tied them down. So to double make sure that the vessels were safe and secure and wouldn't blow over, the yard crew tied them down too. So that's the story from here in Westport at Potter's Point Marina. Dennis, back to you.
All right. Kevin, thank you very much. Let's go back to Joe Zone, who is in the town of Madison tonight. Joe, I know you were saying that
yes,
the
Dennis.
waves have not reached the homes yet. Any change in the last 10 minutes or so?
No, as a matter of fact, the water is slowly coming up. But I just spoke with the harbor master. He said where we're standing right now when Hurricane Irene came in, that we would have been 10 feet underwater. The water was all the way down. He's not worried about homes down here, but I will tell you this, as you feel the wind picking up, and I talked about the wind the last time we were here, there's now a big front of rain about to come in, and we think we're going to really start to get pummeled down here with rain. You can see it off over my right shoulder. Amazingly, people, this is a very popular public corner. It's a boat launch. And so people come down to the end of the street, and they've been coming in here to check things out, to take pictures, to just see how it's going. We are live right here in Madison. Guys, back to you.
Brand new tornado warning for Middlesex County. All right, here's an early warning pinpoint Doppler. We're tracking the storm that's through Middlesex. This is a storm that initially had a tornado warning attached to it when it was moving over the open water of the Atlantic toward the eastern part of Long Island. It went over the Sound, it weakened, and now has re-strengthened. So we do have this brand new tornado warning on the cell that's moving away from Killingworth. It is going to be making its way rapidly over Route 9, say between Middletown and Chester, as it's making its way to the north, and doing so at a very rapid pace. So it looks like it's moving to the north at 65 miles an hour. So this is radar indicated a storm possibly producing a tornado. So we'll take you in and look at the shear rate here, and there you can see that bright area of green indicating where we're seeing some shear. We're going to bump this out a little bit and do a storm track for you from the storm as it's making its way to the north. I got to adjust the time, the speed on this, as it is making its way to the north at around 65 miles an hour. So on that current path, if this storm were to stay together, it's going to be reaching Middletown by 3 o'clock. That's less than 10 minutes from now. Rocky Hill 3:06, Newington 3:09, same for Wethersfield, and just after 3:10 for Manchester, Hartford, and as well for East Hartford. So what we're tracking here is a part of the storm that is showing wind that is changing direction with height. That is the wind shear that is leading us to see the rotation has prompted the Weather Service to issue this particular tornado warning. So this storm is rapidly moving to the north, like these storms have been today, doing so at around 65 miles an hour. So currently, again, this is just through the northern extent of Killingworth, heading toward Haddam, just to the east of Durham, over Higginham Road, heading just to the east of, say, Jackson Road and Finley Road. So again, we'll take a look at the traditional reflectivity mode as we're looking at the southern extent of the storm. Where you see that notch is where the possible tornado is currently located, and we look for those greens and reds to match up. So greens are moving toward the radar site that we're currently using is on Long Island. The winds with the red indicating winds moving away from the radar site. So Bruce, we can take a look at this with the early warning pinpoint Doppler, and as well our own velocities here, indeed showing some circulation there as well.
That's right, Mark. We do got a very distinct circulation in there. Typically, you know, when you get tropical systems moving in, tornadoes are weak, but they still cause damage. We're not going to play it down at all. We have that tornado warning in effect. There's likely some wind damage going on, not only due to the tornado threat that's going on in this particular part of the state, but also due to the strong winds around Storm Isaias. Mark, can you hone in on that just a little bit? I want to take a look at some of the roadways and communities that are being affected by this particular tornado warning as it moves off to the north at around 65 miles an hour. There you see right there, and I'm going to just go over to this monitor here, right around Jackson Road. We're seeing some heavy rain. There we go. That's a It's a little bit, this is all brand new, trying to social distance and cover severe weather at the same time. But Mark adjusted my monitor for me. So there you can see it. So moving up right toward Higginham right now. And this is the area where we are seeing a circulation. So that's where the tornado warning is in effect. It includes Higginham as it's moving off to the north at around 65 miles an hour. So if you live in this part of the state, again, we urge you to take all the precautions necessary. It's a radar indicated tornado. It means that it may be happening, maybe not. It's radar indicated, but it is moving off to the north very quickly. So if you live in these communities, and I'm talking about places like Portland, Cromwell, Rocky Hill, Glastonbury, Newington, Wethersfield even, Hartford, East Hartford, and West Hartford, you can see the arrival times there between 3:03 and around 3:16. It's best to just take all the precautions necessary, which means get away from the windows, get to an interior room in the house. If you have a basement, a lot of us do, get into the basement underneath the solid object, just so that you're not near glass or any potential flying debris should this happen to be tornado as it's moving rapidly to the north. You can see it's moving right up there toward Middletown, Cromwell, Rocky Hill, Glastonbury. All these towns are in the path of this storm, and whether it's a tornado or not, it can be pulling down some high wind speeds that could cause damage in itself. I just checked the latest numbers from Eversource and also United Illuminating, two of the power companies that provide power into Connecticut, and we're now up to about 120,000 customers without power. And that number has gone up dramatically over the last couple of hours as we get these high wind speeds along with embedded tornadoes moving through. There we can see, Mark, and I'm assuming you've got the shear rate
yes, shear
line
rate
up
is
here.
on, yes.
Where you see this darker or lighter shade of green, that is where we're starting to see some shear. What do we mean by shear? Not only, there's several kinds of shear. There's shear with the wind speeds that increase with height, and there's also shear that occurs when you have turning in the winds, horizontal turning. So there's a couple of kinds of shear that we're watching, and that one is the turning in the atmosphere. And some of this could be induced by terrain. Hills, perhaps, could actually, with the clouds so low to the ground, with the clouds moving very rapidly to the north and so low to the ground, some of the terrain in Connecticut can impart some spin on these storms that are moving northward. Even though there's hardly any lightning strikes in the state, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a real thunderstorm. These showers and heavy downpours could cause spin-ups and tornadoes just about any time because of that high level of shear in the atmosphere right now. These conditions are going to be ripe for that to happen over the next couple of hours. Things will get a lot better as we go into this evening. But here it is, 2:56 in the afternoon. We're under a tornado warning, and I think we're going to continue to see, volatile weather conditions right up through around 5, maybe even 6 o'clock. As you can see, even in New London now, we're watching these heavy bands offshore that are moving toward the north, right into New London County. So Groton, Long Point, New London, be on the lookout for this storm. There is the potential that that could produce a spin up as well. So we're kind of watching the situation very, very carefully. We got our reporters out in the field following the winds that are causing damage across the state. We got Dennis on the anchor desk right now, and Aaron Connolly has just joined in. So we got everybody covered. Scott, Melissa are in here as well as we continue to have these very volatile conditions, I should say, over the next few hours.
All right, so as we track with early warning pinpoint Doppler, we do have that storm offshore heading toward coastal New London counties, county that is, and then elsewhere we do have that tornado warning for Middlesex County. So a little bit closer look at that. The threat is going to be right over Route 9 here shortly, just to the west of Haddam, between Haddam and Middletown, and then passing to the east of Middletown likely as it continues progressing, or maybe perhaps right over Middletown as it's going just west of due north as it's continuing at 65 miles an hour. So kind of paralleling, in fact, the Route 9 corridor, producing some gusty wind. And, if it's rotating wind or otherwise, it's enough to do damage. And as Bruce mentioned, the power outages continue to grow across the state. I do want to show you briefly here on the wide view as we continue to track Isaias as a whole. The storm center is making its way to the west of Connecticut, out of New Jersey, out of northeastern Pennsylvania, heading in the general direction of Albany. And as of last check, the winds now sustained are down to 65 miles an hour. So that is something we're monitoring. It's weakening a little bit, but the forward speed continues to increase. Now moving to the north-northeast at 40 miles an hour. So again, speaking to the threat for the heaviest of the rain that was going to lead to some flash flooding, that is certainly to the west of Connecticut. Not to say we can't get some poor drainage, nuisance-type flooding here within our state, but the kind of thresholds to meet that flash flooding concern looks to certainly be farther to the west from us and not here in Connecticut. So again, I want to take you back to early warning pinpoint Doppler. We've got the tornado warning for Middlesex County, and this runs until 3:15 this afternoon. So another 15 minutes from now, get you into the latest frame here showing how the rotation, that little notch, is just making its way to the north of Haddam, just to the east of Route 9 in Middletown over Portland currently. The worst of it with the circulation there. We'll get you into the latest with the velocity mode and see what we can see with the storm there. Again, a little rotation, but certainly a bit broader than what it once was. Not quite as tight, so perhaps losing some of that rotation, which is some good news as well, as this is heading in the general direction of Cromwell and the greater Hartford area. This is a loop over the last 30 minutes, showing, again, the storm basically moving right through Middlesex County from southeast to north-northwest. So this is going to be making its way in the general direction of Rocky Hill, Glastonbury, Wethersfield, Hartford, West Hartford, East Hartford. There you can see, in fact, we've got an update from the Weather Service now on the warning, and the warning has now been extended. It now extends all the way to the Connecticut-Massachusetts border. So we've got the warning that goes through Cromwell until 3:15. This new warning that includes a large chunk of Hartford County runs until 3:45. So the storm is now, with this rotation, despite some weakening, has been extended, has been reissued, now includes, say, the 91 corridor north of where it meets up with Route 9, and then as well up through Hartford, West Hartford, all in the path of this storm that has a tornado warning on it. Interesting to point out that this is a storm that initially was south of Long Island, south of the Twin Forks, worked over Long Island, worked over the eastern part of Long Island Sound, weakened a bit, and then just north of Clinton, just north of Killingworth, in fact, it had a new warning attached to it, and that now has been extended. So we're tracking that little notch there. That is where there's the rotation. Again, looking for radar updates here. Certainly we see those brighter shades of green is where we see that shear, which is helping us to indicate where the rotation with this storm is as it lifts to the north and doing so at a pretty rapid rate. So we're going to track that for you to the north, just to the west of due north, and it's moving rapidly at around 65 miles an hour. So on that trajectory, reaching Glastonbury at 3:08, so that's about 7 minutes from now. Wethersfield 3:09, Hartford 3:12, around 3:13, East Hartford, West Hartford, Windsor 3:17, as well as for South Windsor, Bloomfield, and Simsbury. So if you're in the greater Hartford area in the path of this storm, you'll want to take your tornado safety precautions, get to your lowest level of your home. If you don't have a basement, then your first floor. You want to stay away from windows and cover yourself. And crank up the volume on your TV. If you've got the Channel 3 app, we'll keep you updated as we're simulcasting there as well to make sure you stay informed as the number of power outages here across the state continue to grow. So again, we do have a tornado warning that has been issued for the greater Hartford area. This tornado warning now runs until 3:45 this afternoon. It is a rapidly moving storm to the north-northwest and doing so at around 65 miles an hour. So it's the storm that's over Portland right now. We'll take a little bit closer look at that storm as it's moving just to the east of Middletown over Portland, heading right in the direction of Rocky Hill. So certainly cause for concern there, and as well points north. You can see as we take you through the fan here as we head farther in time, Glastonbury, Hartford, West Hartford, East Hartford, and of course Wethersfield, up through Bloomfield and Windsor. And this particular warning goes all the way to the Massachusetts border. So we've got this one storm with a tornado warning attached to it. We also have storms off of the southeastern Connecticut shoreline that are going to be moving inland to New London County, and we're also tracking downpours non-severe currently. No warnings attached to them from Waterbury south along Route 8. Bruce Scott.
Okay, Mark, we just got some updates from Eversource and United Illuminating. About 140,000 customers are now without power here in Connecticut, not only due to the severe storms moving through, but just the generally strong winds that are blowing around Tropical Storm Isaias. So you can see the storm that has the tornado warning attached to it is right there around Middletown and Cromwell over Portland. It's got some very intense rainfall, obviously some very intense winds. There's not much in the way of lightning. So, again, you don't have to hear thunder for this to happen in a situation like this. It could just be a heavy downpour that is producing a spin-up or a tornado as this is moving off to the north, right toward Glastonbury, Wethersfield, and Hartford. So this is a largely populated area that's under a tornado warning right now as it moves off to the north-northwest at around 55 miles an hour. So this is a bad time in Connecticut to be out on the roadways. We have a significant power outage underway right now with over 140,000 customers without power. That is very significant. It's due to winds that have been gusting to between 60 and 70 miles an hour. There's been winds gusting to 70 miles an hour in New York City and on Long Island, even a gust to 78 miles an hour at Battery Park in New York. And there's reason to believe that we're having similar conditions right here in Connecticut in the western part of the state. But right now, this tornado warning is in effect for a good part of Hartford County this afternoon as this storm races off to the northwest at about 55 miles an hour. So as Mark said, it's a time to take cover. It may or may not be a tornado, but it's a tornado warning, which means it could be happening. So it's best to stay away from windows, get to the inside of your house, perhaps in the basement, in an interior room, and surround yourself with blankets, clothing, things like that. Again, it's just precautionary. It makes sense. And this is also not a good time to be out in the area roadways. You got the trees that are swaying. We've had branches and tree limbs coming down, blocking some roads in some cases. So it's not a good time. You don't want a tree to come down in your car, which can cause you harm or even worse. And we have seen that happen in Connecticut over the years with strong wind events. And it's a heavily wooded state. Actually, one of the heaviest wooded states that we have in the country. So please be aware of that. It's not a good time to travel. Is this the velocity mode, Mark, that you just popped it into? All right, so we're looking here for some turning of the wind in the atmosphere where we see green and red. Now, the green, depending on what radar site we're looking at, the green means that its wind is moving toward the radar site. The red means that the wind is moving away from the radar site. So we're looking for what we call a couplet, that little area of tight green and red, which could indicate rotation. So there are signs of that. This is a storm that has had a history even from the south of Long Island. This was the one that had a tornado warning attached to it in Middlesex County when it was still over Long Island. That tornado warning was canceled. Obviously, it regenerated into a storm that's producing some rotation over interior portions of the state. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, with a situation like this, terrain can induce some spin in the atmosphere because the clouds are so low to the ground. And there's also a tremendous amount of wind aloft. There's also a tremendous amount of turning in the lower levels of the atmosphere. So these spin-ups can happen at just about any time. So a storm could weaken for a little while, and then it could regenerate again and cause a spin-up. So we're going to see these conditions last for several more hours. And Mark just put in the arrival time. I'm going to get out of the way of the cone here, and you could see Glastonbury right around 3:10 p.m. I'm going to get over here a little bit, get out of your way. Glastonbury around 3:10, Wethersfield 3:11, Hartford 3:14, East Hartford 3:15, Windsor 3:19, the same in Bloomfield, Simsbury 3:23, Windsor Locks 3:24, and East Granby 3:26. These are approximate arrival times, assuming that this storm is moving off to the north-northwest at around 55 miles an hour. So, Mark, this is really impacting a bad time of the day and also a large area of the state that is heavily populated. So people just have to heed our warning and take cover.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
Probably stay off the roads.
Unrelated to this, and because the number of power outages are growing across the state, we're getting lots of reports of damage elsewhere. So we have one from West Haven where a big tree limb fell and hit a condo in the area of Bull Hill Lane. So that is what we're tracking. Again, the reports keep coming in, leading to the numerous, tens of thousands, now over 100,000 power outages with Eversource and United Illuminating. So those numbers could could actually grow a bit more as the winds are still yet to really hit their peak, something that we're going to be watching. Then, of course, we've got on top of that, we've got this threat for a possible tornado. So you can see here we do have an update here. I want to refresh this for you. The storm, again, because it is rapidly moving as the radar is scanning, giving us those updates here as the storm is lifting to the north and northwest, and doing so at around 60 to 65 miles an hour. So looking for some of the velocity there. It is still showing some signs of rotation. The Weather Service out of Boston, they issued the warning here for Hartford County because this was such a long-lived storm and had the history that it did from south of Long Island across the Sound into southeastern Connecticut, that they could not ignore this storm as it showed such long duration signs of rotation. And we're still seeing that a bit with those echoes of green heading toward the radar site, red away. So that's the rotation there. So right over Hartford right now. So making its way, for instance, perhaps near Weathersfield, just to the east of the Elmwood section of West Hartford, to the west and northwest of Glastonbury. So we'll do a storm track on that particular part of the storm and look again at the shear rate, and that is certainly something that helps to pick out where that rotation is currently ongoing. And it is making its way from the Hartford area to the northwest at around 65 miles an hour. So I actually need to come in and do a little manual manipulation on here to get this up to 65 miles an hour. And on that path, it's going to get into Bloomfield by 3:15, which is just about 6 minutes from now. Again, that is because of the fast forward speed that these storms are traveling. Simsbury 3:19, Granby by 3:23, Suffield 3:23, and by 3:30, it's in Massachusetts. So we're tracking this tornado warning. Again, this particular tornado warning runs until 3:45, so another 35 minutes from now, but it's probably going to be outside of that warning area by then, given how fast it is moving. So again, looking at the reflectivity mode here and putting it into motion for you, this is the loop over the last 30 minutes, just showing how quickly the storm has been progressing. It was down around Haddam when the warning was first issued north of Killingworth, and then made its way near Middletown as it crossed Route 9, and then is now up along 91 in our capital city, lifting into northern Hartford County, up toward eventually, say, near the Notch, if it stays on its current path and with its current strength. So that is a look at that situation. As we look at the statewide perspective, in addition to that tornado warning, we have heavy rain, non-severe, no warnings attached yet to what is happening in New London County, but we've been tracking these tropical downpours moving in from off the Sound, making their way through New London and Stonington, up toward Bosra and Norwich, through Montville and 395, where it meets up with Route 2. So very heavy rain here. Again, no warning quite yet on anything in this corner of the state, but certainly heavy rain that's going to reduce visibility and lead to that concern for hydroplaning with ponding on area roadways. So we've got that, and then also non-severe along and west of Route 8 in Litchfield County, Torrington, westward, Thomaston, as well as Litchfield and Morris, getting on some of that heavy rain right now. Again, everything is rapidly moving from south-southeast to north-northwest. So getting a bit of a break in the action now throughout Fairfield County, which is some good news there. In fact, conditions will likely continue to improve from southwest to northeast as the storm center from Isaias continues to make its way to the north and west of Connecticut. So we've got the center of the circulation right in there, so clearing northern New Jersey, now well to the northwest of the New York City metro area, heading in the general direction of Albany. So you can see this band of downpours and supercells lifting across Connecticut now. So pretty easy to say now that Fairfield County kind of in the clear with regard to the threat for severe storms and possible tornadoes, as that threat will be lifting north along this segmented arcing band that continues making its way from south to north. So it's along this band where we're going to see the greatest threat for storms that could possibly rotate as the center of Isaias makes its way up toward Albany. So the forward speed on this motion means that it's going to be ending even sooner than earlier thought. Conditions will likely be improving as we head toward and through the typical evening commute time. Here it's 3:12, and we're already getting improving conditions throughout southwest Connecticut as the storm center again passes to the west of Connecticut.
That's right. It looks like, these rain bands that we're looking at here, not only are they lifting to the northwest as we see these cells moving through, but also we're noticing that the the bands themselves are kind of shifting to the east with time. That's why if you live in Fairfield County, as you said, there's a good chance that the severe threat is rapidly diminishing. But in Litchfield County, also northern portions of Connecticut into eastern Connecticut, we're still under the threat for tornadoes right in the Hartford area. We're under that tornado warning right now. An update from the utility companies. Eversource reporting 114,000 customers without power. United illuminating 47,000. That is up to 151,000 customers without power right now. A report of Easton in western Connecticut. 88% of the town of Easton is without power, and Westport, 81% of Westport is now without power. So you can see the Eversource map up there right now showing that obviously, western Connecticut is hard hit, and other parts of the state as well. So we are seeing these heavy rain bands. Now, this one area of rain and heavy rain, indeed, is right there around New London into the Norwich area. That's something we're watching as well, in addition to this cell that has a tornado warning attached to it. It's moving so fast. It's very incredible wind speeds aloft, carrying the storm off to the north-northwest at 55 miles an hour. That's nearly highway speed. So this tornado warning is still in effect for areas right now to the north of Hartford, but we are seeing a little bit of redevelopment to the north of Haddam right now. So we have to watch any of these cells for the sign of a tornado. Spin-ups can happen just about any time. So there you see it. Mark honed in on the area around Haddam, over toward East Hampton, to the east of Middletown, right along the Connecticut River right there for this heavy cell moving northward on the heels of that tornado warning. And of course, we have this other area of rain right around Gales Ferry, Montville. We're looking at some heavy rain there. Norwich, you're getting some tropical downpours. So any one of these cells could develop into a spin-up or a tornado at just about any time. But if you get into the Hartford area, this particular storm is looking a little weaker. Still, even though it's looking weaker, there are some signs of weak rotation in there. Some green indicating wind blowing that way toward the south, the red indicating wind blowing toward the north. So there is still some rotation in there. That could be a spin up. And typically with tropical systems, the tornadoes are weak, but they still cause damage and are of grave concern. So there you can see there was a little shear in there, and certainly these storms are producing some heavy rain. We've had reports of, Scott, what's the latest on the
75-mile-an-hour wind gust.
Wow. And where was that?
West Haven, the Engineering Science and Agri School.
Wow, a 75-mile-an-hour wind gust in West Haven. That is hurricane force winds. Tropical storm force winds go from 39 to 73 miles an hour. Hurricane force winds start at 74 miles an hour. So we've had hurricane force winds in West Haven. And we've got to give some credit to the National Hurricane Center. We take a look at some of their progressions, in terms of tropical storm force winds and hurricane force winds, and they had that area of red go right up over portions of Connecticut, and Mark and I and Scott were all telling you about how there could be some gusts to hurricane force here in Connecticut, and sure enough, that has happened. So we're going to kind of hone in on the Windsor area right now. All right, you can see there's still that area of green and an area of red to the east of it, right around Park Avenue in Windsor. That's right over, not too far away from I-91. In fact, I used to live off Park Avenue years ago, but we have signs of rotation. So Windsor, you're under that tornado warning, and points on north are under the tornado warning as well. And that extends right up to the border with Connecticut and Massachusetts. So putting on some projected times, we're looking at, and I'm going to let you see this map a little bit better. East Granby around 322. Granby a little bit later. Granville. These are all areas in Massachusetts. Your turn is a little bit after 3:30. But Granby and East Granby, this storm is moving your way as it moves off to the north-northwest at 55 miles an hour, somewhere between 522 and 525 mark. And of course, we're still watching those showers in southeastern Connecticut.
Yeah, so we've got downpours, and that is it, basically just tropical downpours moving throughout all of New London County currently. They're also, like everything else today, rapidly moving from the south-southeast to the north-north northwest. You can see the motion here over the last 30 minutes showing how they moved in off the sound right there over 95, up 395 to where now it meets up with Route 2. So very heavy rain there is going to be eventually heading in the direction of southern Tolland and Windham counties. With regard to any sort of shear or rotating wind on this, nothing overly pronounced right now, just a batch of, again, very heavy rain that's going to reduce visibility and lead to that concern for hydroplaning if you're out traveling today. So looking at the big picture here, we still have the tornado warning in effect for Hartford County that runs until 3:45. On the wider view here with Isaias, there are two red boxes. We've got this one to our south. That is the one that includes the southern four counties. That is going to be allowed to expire at 4 p.m. As we previously mentioned, as the storm center passes to the west of Connecticut and lifts northward, the severe threat will be decreasing. So the Storm Prediction Center is going to allow this to expire at 4 p.m. Meanwhile, the threat will last a little bit longer as that arcing band of segmented storms and supercells lifts across southern New England from south to north. So it's along that band that's lifting northward right there that we're going to see the greatest threat for storms to possibly rotate. So as soon as that lifts north into Massachusetts and into Rhode Island, then we'll be able to sound more of an all clear with regard to the threat for at least rotating wind. We've got the wind in advance of Isaias coming in out of the south. We've seen wind gusts to already over 70 miles an hour. As the storm lifts away with counterclockwise flow, that wind will eventually become more west and northwesterly. And that's why the threat for coastal flooding is not as great as it once was, because of the faster movement of the storm. Instead of that wind coming in tandem with the upcoming high tide cycle and our recent full moon, the wind's going to be coming in off the land. So not as big of an issue for later on tonight. But you can clearly see here we've got Isaias moving rapidly to the north-northeast and doing so at around 40 miles an hour, and sustained winds now down to 65. And those winds will continue to decrease a bit as it continues to interact with land.
All right, Mark, an update on the power outages. And it's just getting worse with every passing update from the utility companies. We got a report from United Illuminating of 62,000 customers without power. They service a lot of southern Connecticut. And from Eversource, 132,000 customers without power right now. And that adds up to 194,000 customers without power at the present time. But again, the weather conditions are very intense right now. We're at the height of the storm, the worst of the storm. Things are improving in Fairfield County, but for portions of northern Connecticut on into eastern Connecticut, there's still the threat of tornadoes for a while longer. As Isaias, which is still a very powerful tropical storm, it really didn't have time to weaken over land because it's moving so fast. Also aloft, we got a jet stream that's kind of holding it together. And whenever you get a system that passes to the west like Isaias is, that puts us on the bad side of the storm. So you have a couple of things that add up to damaging winds. One is the wind around the storm, and two is the southerly component on the eastern side of the storm, which can actually add to the wind around the storm. And you get these, what they call vectors adding up, and that's why we're getting winds gusting up to hurricane force here in Connecticut, even though Isaias is a strong tropical storm. As I said before a little while ago, that West Haven has had a gust to 75 miles an hour. So as Isaias continues to race off to the north at nearly highway speed, weather conditions will improve as we go into this evening, but things are going to remain pretty volatile as we go into this evening. I'm going to go over and take a look at some of the latest wind gusts across the area. And let's see, we're going to go into, here we go. Okay, we got a lot of graphics to look at here. A lot of them loaded in to keep you informed. And there it is. West Haven has a gust to 75 miles an hour. What are we looking at here? We got a live iCam, Hartford iCam. Okay, so you can see the heavy rain moving through the greater Hartford area right now. Again, we got some tropical downpours in and around the Hartford area. And there you can see that I just popped up graphically the wind speeds that are occurring in Connecticut right now. That gust to 75 miles an hour. That occurred in West Haven. New Haven itself just had a gust. It updated a second ago to 67 miles an hour. Another location in West Haven had a gust to 56. So a lot of this depends on exposure. If you're really exposed to the wind, even though it's the same town, the same city, you could have winds gusting to 56 miles an hour versus 75 miles an hour. And that's what's happening in West Haven right now with these very strong winds. Let's go back to radar and take a look at the very latest on radar. Scott's going to pop us back into that. And
There we go.
there we go.
There you go. Got radar up now.
All right, perfect. Okay, thanks, guys. It's a team effort this afternoon. We got me, Scott, Melissa, Mark, and I are all in here covering this storm, and we got Mark Zinni and Aaron Connolly on the anchor desk right now. And there you can see we do have some heavy rain that's occurring in northern Connecticut. This is the storm that's associated with the tornado warning. It's about ready to cross the border into Massachusetts. There you can see the heaviest part of that storm is right there on the Massachusetts border. Still some signs of rotation in there. It may not be very impressive looking by looking at the rainfall, but keep in mind with the wind so intense in the atmosphere right now, these showers are producing. There was something else on the roof that was pretty scary, just a big bang on the roof. We had that happen earlier this afternoon, and it happened again. Hopefully there's no damage on the Channel 3 roof, but we're okay here in the studio for sure. The other area of rain that we're watching is in eastern Connecticut. This is producing tropical downpours, which in itself creates a hazard. It's causing a lot of water to pile up on the roads and also creating a visibility concern, so it gets hard to see. And I said it, and I'm going to say it again, it's really not a good time to be out on the road because we have over 150,000 customers without power, reports of trees and power lines coming down, and if you're on the roads in heavily wooded areas, that could come down on your car. So it's a big hazard. You know, just wait the next couple of hours and wait until this evening when weather conditions are going to settle down quite a bit if you do have to get out and run some errands. But right now, with trees and power lines coming down and the power outages adding up, it's not a safe time to be out there. Also, there might be some power lines across the road. You don't want to be crossing those in the car. And of course, you know, if you do encounter a power line that's down on the ground, please assume that it's active, that it's live, and you don't want to go anywhere near it. You want to call your utility company. But they're going to be busy putting power back on, not only after this storm goes, but, you know, tomorrow as well when things are going to settle down quite a bit. But off to our west, we're looking at much better weather conditions to the south and west of Hartford. You get it through Waterbury area over into Fairfield County. And, you know, we're cautiously optimistic that your weather conditions are not going to be as severe. Even though the winds are very strong still in that part of the state, it looks like the greatest threat for tornadoes, at least over the next hour or so, is going to be across northern and eastern portions of Connecticut. Mark.
All right, so again, tracking this situation right now with Isaias, you can see there's certainly a break in southwest Connecticut. Basically, we can give an all clear there as conditions are only going to improve from southwest to northeast as we head through the next hour or two as the storm center passes to the northwest of Connecticut. So there's the wide view here. You can see those two red boxes. The southern box is a tornado watch that runs until 4 o'clock. That's going to be allowed to expire in 35 minutes, so certainly some good news there. The threat lasts a little bit longer across northern Connecticut, but again, it's all about that arc of downpours, cells that are making their way across the state. Notice there's that kind of fanning northward. So it's along this area where we could see still possibly storms that are rotating. So until that band, that segmented arc makes its way farther north and clears Connecticut, we'll still run that risk for storms that could rotate. But this is a very fast-moving storm. Isaias is moving the center of the storm now out of northern New Jersey into southeastern New York and the general direction of Albany. And on the backside of it, winds will switch to the west and northwest, but until then, they're still out of the south and southeast, and we've had some gusts around 75 miles an hour already, leading to the growing number of power outages all across the state. So we've certainly seen the heaviest of the rain across, say, central and western Connecticut, but now eastern Connecticut. I know we've all been wanting some rain. Of course, we'd prefer it without the wind, but we are getting rain statewide, but maybe not as much as we had initially hoped for with regard to the ongoing abnormally dry conditions that we have in parts of the state. But again, the severe weather threat is along that arcing band that is lifting from south to north here across Connecticut. So we've got these storms that are still producing some heavy rain, and as well as we look back at early warning pinpoint Doppler, as that storm that has now prompted the warning it looks like, been allowed to expire or was canceled early, no longer in effect for Hartford County, so happy to report that. So no tornado warnings in effect anywhere in Connecticut right now, and if we were to see any other sort of development or any sort of warning, it would be across eastern Connecticut. This is West Haven, East Haven. So we've got East Haven here. It's hard to make out we've got power lines that are down and trees that are down too. So that's what we're currently looking at from East Haven. So probably a very common scene from all across Connecticut. We've had some reports in Weathersfield on Maple Avenue of some damage there, given the winds that have moved through. So again, in East Haven, certainly a bit of an all clear there with regard to any sort of additional severe weather threat. The winds are still going to be rather gusty, but speaking specifically to severe storms and those that are rotating, southwestern Connecticut, we're certainly getting a bit of an improvement there. We're focused here on early warning pinpoint Doppler across eastern Connecticut. We're looking, say, just west of 395 through Stores and around Brooklyn, Wyndham, Lebanon, Franklin, down to where Route 2 meets up with 395. This is where the heaviest of the rain right now in the state is ongoing, and this is lifting toward the north. So it's going to be heading into Connecticut's quiet corner. So wind gusts as of the most recent hour, as we take a look at those right now, gusts to 58 miles an hour in Bridgeport, 1 to 54 miles an hour in New Haven, 53 miles an hour Waterbury, even gusts in Hartford to 46 miles an hour, 1 in Groton to 48 miles an hour. So we still have the tropical storm warning in effect statewide and region-wide for several more hours with those gusty winds that could still enhance the number of power outages. And this is all as Isaias tracks well to the west of Connecticut. There's the update there. Still north-northeast at 40 miles an hour and sustained winds at 65. And by even 8 o'clock tonight, if not even before then, looking for that storm to make its way to the north of Albany. Okay. All right, so at this point, we'll send things over to Mark Zinni and Aaron Connolly as we continue our team coverage here on Channel 3 Eyewitness News as we approach the 3:30 half hour.
All right, hi everyone. We are tracking Tropical Storm Isaias. A lot going on right now, that is for sure. Those winds are picking up. This is a scene in Milford right now. You can see that water really churning. The big story, those winds and a lot of power outages right now all across the state.
Yeah, and that's going to remain in place probably for some time right now as the wind continues to just hit certain areas of the state, really nonstop right now. Let's go to Channel 3 Eyewitness News reporter Courtney Zeller. She is live right now. She is in Milford, I believe, with more details on what she's seeing there. Courtney?
Hey, Mark. Yeah, you know, obviously the wind is a huge problem here in Milford. We have a lot going on. First, look at this ocean right here. The waves much higher than they were around noontime, that's for sure. Again, the biggest issue here really is the wind. We're going to turn around here if you can see this. Shingles coming off that roof right over there. We have a snapped line. I don't think that's a power line though. But a lot of people have been coming out here to take a look at the waves themselves. I know flooding is a real concern here in Milford. 8 years ago, if you remember, Superstorm Sandy came through. They had a lot of problems with flooding. But rain, we're not seeing any rain at the moment. It was raining pretty heavy earlier this afternoon, but that rain has stopped. And again, this wind is really something else. I could barely get out of the car earlier. That's how strong it was. I was trying to get that door open, but again, it was extremely difficult. So we will be out here. We'll be monitoring the situation. I have been talking with officials today. I know they have all of their crews out. They've been going up and down the shoreline, just making sure everyone's okay. We haven't heard anything about evacuations just yet, but they have said if they have to evacuate, they will let residents know. Again, we'll be out here and we'll keep you posted on any new information that we learn. For now, we're live from Milford. Courtney Zeller, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Okay, Courtney, thank you very much. Be careful out there. You see that wind, you see the water right there. That's obviously a concern. You know, we see people a lot of times go out and take a close-up look at the storm damage or at the waves, but you certainly want to be careful.
You read my mind right there. And the big thing I noticed was that the streets seemed kind of desolate. So
Yeah.
I think people were following those warnings and taking shelter and trying to remain safe because it's just at any moment those winds could pick up and bring something in a direction that you do not want it to.
Our team coverage continues right now, and as we said, much of the state seeing rain and that wind.
Channel 3 Eyewitness News reporter Aya Galal is live for us in East Haven with a look at what is happening there. Aya, we can see those trees moving right next to you.
Hi, Aaron and Mark. Yeah, the wind is certainly picking up a lot here in East Haven. Right now, there isn't really much rain. It's just these big gusts of wind, and it's spreading a lot of debris, too. Now, we're right by the Overbrook Early Learning Center. We're starting to see the effects of that strong gust of wind. And take a look. We see actually a tree fell down on a transformer over here. You could see this area is blocked off right by the basketball court. And earlier, the school was evacuating students. We've seen parents coming and picking up students, but I spoke with an official on scene here. They say the situation is under control. Fortunately, nobody was hurt, and so now town officials will be out here assessing the damage. But town officials here in East Haven say they've been preparing for this storm for days. They are ready to respond. First responders are ready to respond. They are ready for strong winds, heavy rain, whatever this storm brings. And so we are seeing a lot of debris also when we were driving around in the East Haven area. If you are out on the roads, be sure to take it easy. We've seen a lot of branches down, so just take it slow. That's definitely important. United Illuminating right now is reporting about 4,400 outages here in East Haven. And of course, while it may seem obvious, but if you do see any downed trees or any downed power lines, don't drive over those power lines. So we will continue monitoring the situation here along the shoreline. But again, here at the Overbrook Early Learning Center, no injuries, but that tree has fallen down on a transformer. And so we've seen parents coming to pick up students where some sort of summer program was going on. Fortunately, nobody was hurt, but we'll stay here in the East Haven region and continue monitoring conditions. Reporting live in East Haven, Aya Galal, Channel 3 Eyewitness News. All right,
Aya, thank you. Certainly worrisome for parents who had their children at a situation in a facility like that during the day in a storm like this. They were talking a little while ago, what, a 75-mile-an-hour wind in West Haven, which is a hurricane force.
And very close to where Aya just was. So definitely serious. Right now, we do want to turn to Channel 3 Eyewitness News reporter Kevin Hogan. He is live in Westbrook for us right now. Kevin, we caught up with you about an hour ago, and you were showing us some really strong winds in the 50-mile-per-hour range.
Well, did better than that in the past hour, Aaron and Mark. No, with this anemometer, we clocked 64-mile-an-hour winds. Of course, that's unofficial. That's with this little device that we have in our hand here. But we have some strong gusts, 48, 50. I don't know what it is sustained, but it's been at times we felt like Sister Bertrill in The Flying Nun. Now, the crews here at the Potter's Point Marina North Yard, they are continuing to tie down and make sure these vessels, these very expensive large yachts, are secure. We saw some lines get loose because these winds are ferocious. They continue to push and push these large vessels into the docks. If they're not double tied, they can get loose. They start to get loose, they get even more loose. And they could even cause a lot of damage either to the marina or to the boats themselves. Look at those waves out there if you can't see them. We're right off of, in Westbrook on the Clinton Town line. And it's been like this for a couple of hours. And that tide is going out, thank goodness. But at 12:26 tonight, when the tide comes back here, it comes high. It might be a different story with this full moon. But the wind is the story here in Westbrook, Aaron and Mark. Live at the mobile newsroom, Kevin Hogan, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Yeah, those waves, Kevin, not something we're used to seeing on the Long Island Sound. That is for sure a clear product of Isaias. Also, big reminder right now, no better time to keep the Channel 3 streaming news app handy to track the storm 24/7. If you have not already downloaded it, now is the time to do so. Here's why. You can look at the radar, get updated forecasts, and stay on top of alerts. And especially this, if you lose power, which a lot of people are without power right now because of those strong winds, you can still watch our news and weather coverage on the app.
Also worth mentioning, we do a newscast at 7 o'clock each night, and at 7 in the morning that is just on our streaming news app, so we'll have the latest for you right there as well. Campgrounds and state parks shut down at noon today in advance of the storm.
And anyone there today had to pack up and get out. Channel 3's Joe Zone now is live in Madison for us, bringing the latest on the conditions there. And Joe, certainly windy by you. You can really see that surf churning behind you.
It's unbelievable. The wind is howling, the waves are pounding, and the sun is shining here. The wind has picked up in the last hour dramatically. I remember talking to the harbor master about an hour ago. He said 50 miles an hour. It's more than that now, 60. But the key thing here is the water level. I have been watching it all afternoon. Out at the point, There's like a base rock out there, out on the point, as cameraman Mike Kopelman struggles to just keep the camera. We have it lodged between the two cars, blocking off some of the wind, but it is bad. But there goes the Channel 3 hat. That's gone. Sorry about that. But the water level is actually going out. The waves are big and pushing water, but the level here is going out. As you can see, Mike Kopelman is having a hard time. The waves are in. We are live in Madison. Guys, back to you.
Checking out that scene right there. Joe, your jacket just blowing in the wind, the storm surf behind you. Clearly the wind's having a really big impact right there.
Yeah, and you want to not necessarily do what Joe and what our crews are doing right now. Of course, they're setting themselves up as safe as they can between cars like Joe was just talking about, but you don't want to go outside right now in these conditions.
It's best to avoid doing anything you don't have to do. Right now, we do want to go outside right here to Rocky Hill Studios. Meteorologist Melissa Cole is monitoring the conditions.
Hi guys, yeah, I'm right outside on the patio, and about an hour ago I could not have stood here because the winds were insane. Our patio furniture was blowing around. The rain was like actually coming into the building. It was coming down so fast and so furious. So we just waited it out until it was safe to come inside here. And of course we had that tornado warning kind of rolling through Hartford County in our general vicinity. So the conditions right now have improved a little bit in that past hour. In fact, a couple of minutes ago, actually see the sun peeking out. There was a little bit of blue sky, but we've got the clouds back, we've got a little bit of drizzle, and the wind, the gusts just coming in and coming out. So it's just been unbelievable. I know so many of my friends and family around the state are texting me that trees are down in their neighborhood. My husband called me and said at work his power went out. At home, my mom is with my kids right now, and they said our power is out. So it's sort of the height of it right now is what Bruce and Mark have been talking about, and then things continue to improve as we go on through the late evening. But here comes one of those gusts that kind of just knocks your breath away. So best thing to do is just stay inside, hunker down for a few more hours, and things will get better. But definitely don't want to be on the roads or outside during this mess. All right, that's the latest out here on our Rocky Hill patio. I'll send it back inside to you guys.
All right, Melissa. Yeah, we learned for ourselves because the patio furniture had to be turned over this afternoon because things started to blow around. And I don't think, we knew this was coming. We knew it was going to be bad, but not everyone maybe did the right thing and prepared.
And we were just sitting in the newsroom and all of a sudden saw the umbrella come up. We saw the tables come up. So best idea, if you haven't done so already and you have things outside, whether it's, welcome mats, potted plants, kids'
maybe down
toys.
the street at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Try to get that in, put it in your garage, put it in your basement. You just want to avoid any problemsome areas if you can.
And I do believe we're going to go back right now to Chief Meteorologist Bruce DePriest for an update on the situation outside. Hi, Bruce.
Hi, it's certainly been a busy afternoon with several tornado warnings that have happened in the state. Whether we've had a tornado or not, it's hard to tell. We'll have to wait and see if a survey team is sent out by the National Weather Service. But with or without a tornado, we've had significant damage to trees and power lines. Just updating you on the Eversource numbers and United Illuminating, we've had 232,000 customers now without power. There is the map. You could see that Western Connecticut hit hard. Portions of Eastern Connecticut hit pretty hard too. Many towns, they're not unscathed. The power outages going on in Western Connecticut, one of the hardest hit areas. And of course, that's where we've seen winds gusting up to very close to a hurricane force in places like West Haven. One bit of good news is that the tornado watch has been trimmed back. It's now been canceled for Fairfield and New Haven counties. It remains in effect for the rest of the state. You can see how things are kind of gradually improving by looking at early warning pinpoint Doppler. You can see that the showers in New Haven County are relatively light, but we still have some heavy downpours in northern and eastern Connecticut. I'm going to focus in on some of the areas where we are watching for the potential for something a little bit stronger to develop. Right there to the north and east of Norwich, and far eastern Connecticut, we have right around Voluntown and also Preston and North Stonington, a heavy downpour. And these always have the chance of producing a spin-up. So we have to keep our guard up for the potential for more spin-ups and tornadoes as we go through the next hour or so. And then we also take a look at northeastern Connecticut, right up there around Putnam and Woodstock, where we have a very heavy cell that is soon to cross the border into Massachusetts, and also some let me widen this out one more time and show you that in the Hartford area, things have improved. Nothing nearly as intense right now. But as we go to the east, right there around stores and Chaplin and northward into Stafford. We have some heavy downpours. And interestingly, all afternoon long, we have not seen any lightning strikes. You can see the lightning counter on the lower right of your screen there, right above the Channel 3 bug. However, we have not seen any lightning strikes, and it doesn't really matter in a situation like this. You could have these what we call low-topped cells that are producing heavy rain, but at the same time they could be producing spin-ups. It's just kind of a ripe situation in the atmosphere right now for that to happen. But I really believe over the next hour or two, weather conditions are going to improve tremendously. We take a look at the larger view, and you can see that Tropical Storm Isaias, which is still very strong, is now starting to get right up there to the latitude of the Connecticut-Massachusetts border, and it's going to be moving pretty much over the Albany area. So you can see off to the south and west of Connecticut, weather conditions are improving. There's just a little bit of wrap-around rain into northern New Jersey, and this tornado threat is kind of diminishing in southwestern Connecticut as well. So I really think that with this one band that's still moving in from off the ocean, there is still the threat for some spin-ups and tornadoes over the next hour or so. But you could also see that while the cells are moving to the northwest, the band itself is kind of lifting to the north and northeast right now. So as we go into this evening, I really think weather conditions are going to improve quite a bit. But again, we do have a tremendous amount of customers without power right now. We're looking at the severe threat according to the Storm Prediction Center. And whenever you get the yellow and especially the orange, which means an enhanced threat for severe weather, you really have to be on the lookout. But again, we are seeing weather conditions improve in Fairfield County in that area that is technically enhanced. We still have a tropical storm warning in effect for the entire state, where winds could be gusting to 40 miles an hour or higher. We've actually had some gusts to hurricane force right here in Connecticut. We'll go to our weather network, and you can see that the maximum wind gust reported in the state so far, and it could be even higher, as in West Haven. Gust to 75 miles an hour. Looking at Bristol, right in the greater Hartford area, we've had winds gusting to over 50 miles an hour, a gust to 54 miles an hour at the Green Hills School. At Storrs, we had a gust to 46, and Winstead, a gust to 42 miles an hour. But I checked with the National Weather Service, and they said that there's actually been some wind damage and tree damage in the town of Winstead. So this storm will continue to improve gradually. We'll take a look at some gusts elsewhere across the estate, and you can see there it is. These are the latest reports from some of the airports around the state where we had a gust to 58 miles an hour in Bridgeport. That doesn't necessarily mean that's been the peak wind gust. It's just what's happening right now. A gust to 54 miles an hour in New Haven, and a gust to 44 miles an hour in Chester. Groton, you had a recent gust to around 33 miles an hour. So returning to early warning pinpoint Doppler, we are looking at some heavy rain, which is impacting mainly eastern Connecticut right now. Weather conditions are improving over central and southwestern portions of the state. So I think, by around 5 or 6 o'clock this evening, I think the threat for the tornadoes will be over, but will take a little while longer for the winds to settle down. So with that, we're going to go back to Mark and Aaron.
Okay, Bruce, I'm assuming it was pretty bad in Milford a little while ago, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Things are much better there now. You can see on the Doppler radar, and our team coverage continues heading back to that area.
Yes, that is where Channel 3 Eyewitness News reporter Courtney Zeller is showing us what it is like in that part of the state right now. Courtney, clearly the wind seems to be the major problem.
Mark and Aaron, yeah, huge problem here in Milford. If you are just joining us, we just did a live shot maybe a few minutes ago. We were down at Fort Trumbull Beach, which is a block or two away from where I'm standing now. A neighbor came and got me saying a tree was down. It's hit a power line. So here you go. We're going to zoom in and show you. You could see that tree is down. We are on the corner of Charles and Crown. The trunk of the tree is sitting on top of that power line, and a lot of these lines have now snapped. So power is out in this area. Over on Charles, you can't see this, but another tree is down, and it's on the roadway. And then I want to turn around, Tom, if you can go this way. You can see a lot of the branches and trees are down over here, a lot of debris on the roadway. We've been seeing a lot of this really this afternoon. So if you're driving out this way, just really be careful and pay attention because we've seen a lot of debris on the roadway, a lot of smaller branches down. But this is probably the biggest we've seen over here to my left with this big tree down. It's smoking a little bit, so that's always a concern. I actually called 911 and the Milford Police Department, but I haven't gotten through yet. So we're going to keep trying there. But they want to remind you, if you do see power lines, please contact them immediately and stay away because it is not safe. Aaron and Mark, I'll send it back to you, but any new information we get here in Milford, we will bring that to you right away.
Okay, Courtney, thank you. We should mention that obviously with the technology right there, sometimes it comes and goes a little bit, especially in a severe weather situation like this.
But she did give some good advice at the very end. We say it and we say it again. Down power lines, do not go near them. Consider them live. It is a very big safety issue. And while right now we are in the clear with that tornado warning, that doesn't mean this storm is over by any means in terms of bringing us a lot of rain and a lot of wind.
And it could be some time before the lights are back on for some of you. I'm on Eversource's homepage right here. They're saying about 169,000 customers affected right now. You can see this is a live look at the map right here. The bulk of them really in that Fairfield County corner, I should say, of the whole state. But at this point, the outages are kind of widespread now.
It looks like Danbury and Westport are leading the list right there with nearly 12,000 outages. I also was taking a look United Illuminating, and right now they have about 77,000 customers without power. That's actually almost 23% of their customers.
And keep in mind that it's not necessarily safe for a lot of these hardworking men and women to go out there and start getting these lines connected again and getting you power. So as soon as they determine it's the right time, then they will get out there and do it.
It's tough, but we need to all be
Patient
patient
for sure.
during these times.
Our coverage continues right now. As we have said, we have crews really all over the state.
Yes, we do. We're back with Channel 3 New London Bureau Chief Kevin Hogan. He is holding down the fort for us in Westbrook. What's the latest wind speed there, Kev?
Well, Aaron, the latest wind speed right now, it looks like average sustaining 20, 23, 17. But we did clock unofficially 64 miles an hour about an hour ago here at Pilots Point Marina. We are in the North Yard in Westbrook. And the wind story, that's what it is. It's about the wind. At noontime, it was coming from the south-southeast. And then about 2 hours ago when we had driving rain, we had some sun, like we have spots of sun now and then. It was coming from the south. Now it feels like it's turning because the waves are starting to turn and the wind is coming from the southwest. Bruce and Mark could probably define on that. But the crews had to come back out here and retie some of the lines on these boats to make sure they're secure because when the wind shifts, that shifts the boats and it's coming from a different direction. So they have to kind of strengthen the tie downs like he's doing right here on the boat. Right to your right, Andy. The crews at Pilots Point are tying everything down, and that's what they have to do now because the wind changed. That's what he has to do on that boat here. That's called a done deal. There are a lot of vessels. The owners have been out here. The crews have been out here making sure they're secure. Even the boats that are up on land, dry dock, those have been tied down and secured. Earlier today, and hopefully we'll be able to show this on Eyewitness News coming up, but we saw kiteboarders flying over these huge waves right off of Westbrook Beach. That was very cool to see, and the strength, they would do that for an hour, but they had to take advantage of the winds, and that's what they're doing today. And it's all about safety, and everybody here is being cautious about the winds and making sure everything's secure. Live at the Mobile Newsroom in Westbrook, Kevin Hogan, Channel 3, Eyewitness News.
Kevin, quick question for you before you go. We obviously see the bushes behind you on your left, very moving in a lot of different directions. But compared to when you were out there a couple of hours earlier, how has the wind speed changed? Has it gotten worse? Has it been about the same?
Well, it's picked up. We noticed at noon, about 12:20, we were live. And it was around 20, 21 miles per hour. And then about around 2 o'clock, it really kicked off. We saw 40 miles, I saw 55, and then a 64-mile-an-hour gust that we picked up. And that's when some of these boats were leaning into the wind. And that's very tough, to try to stand here and the crews to be safe on these docks and finger docks and tie this equipment down. It's very dangerous situation, but it's got to be done.
Yeah, Kevin Hogan, thank you very much. You make a good point right there. It's obviously very dangerous as well for these boaters who want to make sure that their boats are secure and that nothing gets lost in the sound. Just a reminder right here, keep it with us anytime around the clock on the Channel 3 streaming news app. You can always look at live radar, get your updated forecast, you can get the latest alerts. And there have been a lot today, including those tornado warning alerts. As soon as they happen, they went right to your phone. And if you lose power, you can always watch right there on the app.
And very important to get those alerts so that you can shelter in place and take the necessary precautions to keep you and your family safe. Right now, we do want to continue our team coverage